Call to order the open session for council for June 14th, 2021. I'll pass it over to the clerk to get started.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We will start with the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we are on the lands of the Anishinaabe Nation. This spot where we gather is the traditional lands of the Three Fires Confederacy, the Ottawa, Potawatomi, and Ojibwe. We also recognize that this land is now home to the Delaware Nation. This land was settled through the McKee Purchase Treaty of 1790, and we as beneficiaries of the treaty must recognize our responsibilities, including our collective responsibilities to the land and water. Next, we'll move on to the supplementary agenda. I just wanted to remind council that on Friday, we have added 3 reports. 17E, which is the encroachment of the private sanitary force main of 24907 Winterline Road. Also 17F, the encroachment of the private sanitary sub pump or pump station and force main for 8260 Middle Line Charing Cross. And the other report added was 18B, which is the Together CK Grant Review Committee and Volunteer Appointments Information Report. Moving on to the pecuniary interest, we have had 2 this evening. The first one is on item 15C, which is the community engagement process to support council's motions on woodlots, and that was Councillor Hall who declared a conflict. Also, Councillor Latimer declared a conflict on 15D, the Ontario Heritage Act, Part 4, 30 Elwood Avenue, Community of Chatham. Next, we'll move on to the deputations this evening. The clerk's office will be reading 5 deputations, and I will start with the first one. The first deputation this evening is on item 15D, which is with regards to 30 Elwood Avenue, Community of Chatham. Good evening, Mayor Caniff, council members and staff. My name is Susan Simpson and I am the homeowner of 30 Elwood Avenue. I am also a member of the Municipal Heritage Committee and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to write this deputation. I consulted with the Integrity Commissioner, Mary Ellen Bench, on how to navigate these dual roles, and on June 1st, 2021, she informed me that I have an interest, but not a conflict of interest regarding my property, and I have included her email for you to read. I am pleased to see that my property at 30 Elwood Avenue is before council tonight. However, I disagree with administration's opinions and recommendations. The committee minutes of July 2020 indicate that administration informed that the designation report was unclear and questioned whether the property was worthy of designation 15 months after the committee had unanimously recommended the property for designation. An email from administration to the homeowner in April of 2021 reiterated the same message. In an effort to improve the clarity of the designation report, I consulted with Bert Duclos for assistance in revising and rewriting the designation report. Bert spent decades providing in-service for the municipal heritage committees and municipal staff throughout the province, including Chatham-Kent as part of his former role as a heritage outreach consultant, Culture Services Unit, Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Sport. Although the committee recommended the property for designation based on its contextual and architectural cultural heritage value in May of 2021, some committee members believe that the property also has historic value as its first owner was an executive with the Canada and Dominion Sugar Company, a significant industry in the development of the 20th century life in Chatham-Kent. It was also home for 50 years to the Bondi family, who operated a prominent local business, Bondi's Dry Cleaning, for 6 decades, and it was also the childhood home of one of Chatham-Kent's esteemed council members, Michael Bondi. You will note there is no requirement in the Ontario Heritage Act that a property be listed on the municipal registry in order to be considered worthy of designation. Less than 10% of the designations in the last 5 years have been the properties listed in the Heritage Registry. The typical time between committee recommendations for designation and council decision is just 4 months, and we have waited over 2 years for the staff to move the property forward to council. In the interest of providing a prompt and impartial assessment as to whether or not the property meets the Ontario Regulation 9/06 criteria for determining cultural heritage value or interest, and at no expense to the municipality, a heritage planning firm was retained by the homeowners to provide to council this evening a report and recommendation. The firm is MHBC Planning Limited of Kitchener, Ontario. The municipality of Chatham-Kent has retained their services in the past for the completion of a district designation. The firm's heritage planners are members of the Canadian Association of Heritage Professionals, which is a regulatory body ensuring that members conform to ethical standards and work in accordance with the jurisdictions of practice. Their full report is included as an appendix, and the following recommendation is found on page 1 of this report. MHBC has confirmed the property has cultural heritage value and interest per the criteria listed on the Ontario Regulation 9/06 and should be recommended for designation under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. The property has been determined to have design, physical value, often referred to as architectural, historical, and associative value and contextual value. As homeowners, my family and I would very much like to see 30 Elwood Avenue preserved and protected through designation for future generations to appreciate and enjoy. Thank you very much for your consideration and your time.
The next deputation is also on item 15D, and it is from the Municipal Heritage Committee. My name is Ron VanRabeyne, and I have worked in consultation with fellow committee member Jim Griffin in the writing of this report. Thank you for allowing us to make this deputation on behalf of the Municipal Heritage Committee. The Municipal Heritage Committee was appointed to advise Council on heritage matters, to interpret and explain the Ontario Heritage Act and related provincial regulations, to help preserve significant heritage properties and cultural landscapes in Chatham-Kent, and to promote the importance of preserving built heritage for present and future generations, education, enjoyment, and cultural identity. The committee disagrees with the opinion and recommendations of administration and have indicated so by recommending the property for designation on 2 occasions. A motion was carried with unanimous support made by Dave Benson, seconded by Jim Griffin, that the revised designation report for 30 Elwood Chatham move forward to Council for designation. This is on May 15th of 2019. A motion was carried 8-1, made by Jerry Delanoy, seconded by Loretta Story, that the revised designation report written by Bert Duclos for 30 Elwood Avenue, Chatham, replace all previous designation reports, and that this new report move forward to Council for designation. This motion was made on May 19th, 2021. Bert Duclos is a retired heritage outreach consultant, cultural services unit for the Ministry of Tourism, Culture, and Sport. The committee believes that the property at 30 Elwood Avenue in Chatham meets the Ontario Heritage Regulation 9/06 criteria for determining cultural heritage value for the following reasons. The property has design value or physical value, architectural, as it is a representation of style, and the property has contextual value because it is important in supporting the character of an area. The property is identified as an example of domestic 20th century Beaux Arts and mission style property, which takes aspects from the early 19th century Parisian Beaux Arts architecture. Architects throughout the 20th century reference some, but not all elements from earlier periods to create buildings that are unique and aesthetically pleasing. Centrally located front door, porticos, and corbels, symmetrically arranged windows, fantail, and sections of flat roofs are some of the attributes garnered from the earlier Beaux Arts style. 30 Elwood Avenue's design or physical cultural value is reflected in it being a good example of an evolving middle-class 2-story residence. Contextual value. The property at 30 Elwood Avenue's contextual heritage value lies in its importance in supporting the diverse and evolving character of a residential streetscape. The Beaux Arts and mission style contributes to the streetscape's range of residential styles that represents prosperous middle-class taste of the early 1900s, with its distinct departure from eccentric and asymmetrical architectural of the Victorian era. 30 Elwood contributes to the architectural evolution of the street because of its original features, as well as its non-original and/or replacement features. 80% of Chatham-Kent's designated properties have non-original or replacement features. The Ontario Heritage Act Regulation 9/06 criteria for determining cultural heritage value or interest states that a property may be designated under Section 29 of the Act if it has one or more of the following criteria: design or physical value, contextual value, or historical value. The Municipal Heritage Committee as advisors to council, recommend that 30 Elwood Avenue, Chatham, be designated under Section 29 of the Heritage Act for its design or physical value and its contextual value.
The next deputation is by Ken Bell, and he writes, to anyone who will listen, this comes from my heart. Dear land, forgive us. You've given so much, yet we strip you bare in every place and imagine what you could do, driven to barren disgrace. We forgot that we are you. Dear land, forgive us. Dear water, forgive us. Your endless patience, both clear and cool, turned mud-stained torrents and toxic pools. From your sweetness, our children drank, now closed beaches and you in a tank. Dear water, forgive us. Dear sky, forgive us. We thought you a god, like Yahweh and Ra, but you are more like the sun, to whom we quickly offer our waste. And now in the heat of our haste, we deny you time and time again. Dear sky, forgive us. Dear life, forgive us. We thought we knew who you should be, a mirror of our desire. We cut away things we want not see, and behind the mirror, in deafening fire, we could not hear your plea. Dear life, forgive us.
The next deputation is with regards to item 14B, the motion of Councillor Crew, the support of the induction of the Colored All-Stars into the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame. This deputation is from Brock Greenhall. Dear council members, I am writing this letter in support of Councillor Marjorie Crew's motion that the Chatham-Kent Council send a letter supporting the induction of the Colored All-Stars into the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame to the Director of Operations, Scott Crawford. When I first published the children's historical nonfiction book, Hard Road to Victory, the Chatham All-Star Story, one of my 3 goals was to garner support for the induction of the team into the Hall of Fame. The team was originally placed on the ballot by the Chatham Sports Hall of Fame more than 4 years ago, but since that time, the team has not received enough support for induction. A 24-member induction committee votes on an annual basis on the list of individuals and teams on a ballot. The team would require 75% support from the committee to be inducted. A letter of support from the Chatham-Kent Municipal Council would be extremely helpful in convincing the induction committee that the 1934 team of Trailblazers faced prejudice and racism just to play a game they loved and should be honored for their commitment to furthering the cause of equity and inclusion. Thank you for your time and consideration.
And our final deputation is on item 19C, which is the offer to purchase for Elizabeth Street in the community of Dresden. I write to you in response to property identification number 005980063 Elizabeth Street in Dresden, Ontario. My name is Faith Houston and my property directly borders Elizabeth Street at 152 Dede Street in Dresden. I'm not sure why I'm writing this letter to you when CK Council is going to do whatever they want, regardless of what I or anyone else has to say. Let me present a scene or scenario for you. A young couple goes to look at a house on Dede Street with a real estate agent 9 years ago. The agent mentions that there's a chance that someday the grassy area behind your house could turn into Elizabeth Street. The couple asks the agent what's the likelihood of that ever to happen. The agent replies, not likely. The couple decides to take a couple days to think about it. In those days, the young couple goes to the farmer who owns the land behind the house and asks, is the land ever going to be sold? The farmer says, not in either one of your lifetimes. The couple decides to buy the house based on what the farmer had to say about the land opening up. Over the next 5 years, the couple, who you've probably figured out by now is my husband and I, asks the farmer, are you going to sell? Nope, not happening. My late father also asked the farmer and gets the same response. In 2017, my husband and I inherit a large sum of money, who, by the way, was my dad's inheritance money from his will, and asked the farmer before we started renovating our house, are you going to sell? Once again, we get the same response, nope. Now in 2020, we find out that the land is in the process of being sold. You can understand our shock, disbelief, and anger. Yes, we could sell, but after one spends a large sum of inheritance money on their house, you don't think there would be an emotional attachment to said house? As a homeowner who is directly bordering Elizabeth Street, the opening and closing of the street is definitely going to disrupt my lifestyle, from the noise and traffic to the just plain inconvenience. Once the street officially opens up again and the back housing lots are sold, where is the heavy traffic going to travel? Right down beside my house, constantly. Terribly inconsiderate and disrespectful. I ask all the council members, if this was your house and your neighborhood, would you want this? No one is going to jump at the chance. Even the possibility behind closed doors or without cameras around, you're probably going to tell your fellow council members to vote down the said opening and closing of the street. I also find out that Chatham-Kent Council is only selling the parcel of land to the builder for $2,500. Why were the citizens of DD Street never given the opportunity to buy the land? Oh yeah, that's right. Everything with CK Council is entirely one-sided, on the side of whoever is going to get the most money from. Terribly disrespectful to the residents of DD Street. Also the fact that if the citizens of DD Street were given the opportunity to buy the land, and it would have been a lot more than $2,500. If the residents of DD Street had the amount of money that the Victoria Street and Chatham has, CK Council would absolutely make an amendment to the plan, which is what I'm asking for, an amendment to the plan. All I want is for CK Council to also uphold their end of the commitment to the Native community in terms of the land and water.
And the next item is the consent agenda. And so we will put on the screen which items are being pulled for this evening. So the first item is report 13A, tender award for the McDougall Line and Queens Line intersection, pulled by Councillor Oche. The next report, single source 4 extended cab half-ton pickups, pulled by Councillor Latimer. 14A, naming rights sponsorship strategy, phase 2 is pulled by Councillor Latimer, and there will be a presentation. Item 15A, climate change action plan relaunch. There is a information report and a presentation from staff. The next report, 15C, community engagement process to support council's motion on woodlots. There is an information report and a presentation from staff. And 15D, the Ontario Heritage Act, 30 Elwood Avenue, is being requested to be pulled by Councillor Kirkwood White and Councillor Wright. 16A, Chatham-Kent Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. It is a presentation from staff and has been pulled by Councillor Kirkwood White, Councillor Crew, and Councillor Latimer. Next is 17A, which is Rose Beach Line Slope Stability Municipal Class EA, and that is pulled by Councillor Latimer and Councillor Wright. 17B, Municipal Sandbag Program Update, and is pulled by Councillor Latimer. 17C, the motion of Councillor Sakachi regarding service level review of trails and open spaces, pulled by Councillor Sakachi. And item 19B, which is the proposed arena complex June 2021 update, is pulled by Councillor Oche. Therefore, Mr. Mayor, we have a motion on the floor for the following reports to be approved as presented in the consent agenda. Those items are 11A, 12A, 13B and D, 14B, 15B and E, 16B, 17D, E, F, 18A and 18B, and 19A, C, and D.
Councillor Hall and Councillor Bondi, can I get you to move the consent agenda, please?
So moved, Mayor Kenneth.
And seconded, Mayor Kenneth.
Any questions? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote.
All votes are in and motion passes.
Item 13, tender awards.
13A, tender award contract T20-179 McDougall Line and Queens Line intersection realignment, Community of Tilbury East.
Councillor Oche and Councillor Harrigan, can I get you to move this, please?
I'll move that for sure.
And so seconded.
And Councillor Oche, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm extremely happy to see this kind of a bad intersection on the old Highway 2 Queens line. But I just wanted to speak on it to let everyone know that it is not the intersection of Merlin Town Line and old number 2 or Queens line. I know we've had a few accidents there and people have been talking to me, speaking to me and asking me questions on it. Yeah, but that is not what this is for, but this is what we need to do before we get to that intersection. So I'm happy to see it and extremely happy to put forward the motion. Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, we'll put it to vote.
All votes are in and motion passes. Moving on to 13C, single source 4x2 extended cab half-ton pickups R21-253.
Councillor Latimer and Councillor Crew, can I get you to move this, please?
So moved.
Second.
Councillor Latimer, the floor is yours.
Thank you through the mayor. I actually sent a question in to Wayne and Mr. Dick responded on behalf of Wayne. So I did learn and was reminded that the lifespan of these half-ton pickups were 68 years. And I've heard from a good source, we got a heck of a good deal. So that's great. But I wondered if Mr. Dick would comment on the capacity to electrify our fleet inventory and or whether there is intention to initiate electrification of our municipal fleet of vehicles.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. It's Tim Dick speaking, Director of Drainage Asset Waste Management. The answer is yes, we are continually looking at it. Currently, in terms of electrifying these types of vehicles, which are pickup trucks, as many of you are aware, that technology is just emerging now with, for example, Ford Motor Company introducing electric vehicles, electric pickup trucks in the spring of 2022. So those type of trucks currently aren't available, but we're continually reviewing the development of the market and how it affects the infrastructure and how our infrastructure would have to be adapted for it. And at this time, we're trying to be practical as well as fiscally responsible regarding our investment with respect to EVs for the municipality. But we definitely see this technology coming. It is on its way. It will be here. We just want to make sure that we do it correctly and we do it gradually so that it's a practical way to move forward.
Thanks very much, Mr. Dick. I'm always being asked that question, so I thought I'd take the opportunity to let you update the public. Thanks very much again.
Seeing no other questions. Councillor Scotchy.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Just a quick question to Mr. Dick. I did notice that this was a sole tender, and there was no other ones received. Is there, you know, the reason behind it? There were no other companies put a tender in.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. As alluded to in the report, Councillor Sakachi, a number of the other vendors, and we have had multiple vendors submitting previous, especially the smaller fleet like this one, but a number of vendors, due to the parts shortages and challenges, are unable to commit to the vehicle delivery. We do expect these vehicles, which you're approving tonight, to take anywhere from 14 to 16 weeks. So it is a long delivery time due to parts backups and shortages. I suspect that that's the main reason.
Thank you, Mr. Dick.
You're welcome.
Seeing no other questions, we'll put it to vote.
Thank you. All votes are in. Motion passes.
Item 14, corporate services.
14A, naming rights sponsorship strategy, phase 2. And I'll pass it over to Kathy Hoffman, General Manager of Corporate Services.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very pleased to be bringing you this report this evening. This report contains our recommendations with respect to phase 2 of the naming rights strategy. You may recall the valuation stage that came first. And with us for a very brief presentation this evening is Dan Cimarroni, principal with the Naming Rights Company, who is going to give you a bit of an overview about the report. And then we'll pass it back over to you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Cimarroni.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks everybody for having me. I thought I'd start off the top by saying I am a Chathamite. I was born and raised in Chatham, so it was an honor to do some of the work that we've already done, and would be an honor, obviously, to continue that process. So I am principal of the Naming Rights Company, and we did do an analysis of the assets for the city, which Kathy and team is in possession of. I guess a couple things for me is to let you guys know that I think the timing to go to market for this thing is very good, as your community is embracing a regeneration and a rebirth and a growth, and as people are moving back there and down there. The market is starting to thaw as far as the work that we do with companies and partnerships and sponsorships. We're seeing more and more activity all the time. So I think your timing is very good. I obviously believe that the recurring revenue would be a very good thing for the city. So that's obviously part of that ongoing dialogue. Other than that, I'm here to answer any questions anybody has. You have some key assets that have been identified in the document, in particular the 6 that we've recommended as the lead conversations.
Councillor Latimer and Councillor B. McGregor, can I get you to the floor, please?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Okay, Councillor Latimer, you had a question?
Thank you. Yes, I did. I am one of the board members for the Chatham-Kent Public Library. So there's a bit of concern, and I wanted to ask some questions around the potential public space of the library being chosen. Will the Chatham-Kent Public Board Library be consulted on the opportunity? Our policy, we already have a sponsorship policy in place as a board for the library, and it does state there will be public consultation. Also, we were concerned that the funds are reserved for the library to utilize potentially to expand the Chatham location or further the library's mission within the community. And if a sponsorship opportunity arrives for all of Chatham-Kent Public Libraries, that the funds are used to benefit all of Chatham-Kent Public Libraries. I wonder if Mr. Cimarroni or perhaps Kathy would have a comment on that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's Kathy Hoffman. I'll take those questions. So certainly, Councillor Latimer, the intention of the overall strategy is to make sure that we're involving all of the stakeholders that may be involved in each venue individually. So certainly we'll ensure that we have conversation with the library board about this as well and involve them in the process. Mr. Cimarroni and his team will obviously be continuing to meet with library staff. We have had the opportunity to meet with Tanya Sharp through this process as well. And then the details around, I think the second part of your question was what happens if we have a sponsorship that might include more than just one library? Is that what your second point was?
Sorry, I had to put myself off. I mean, it was with regard to, are the funds going to be reserved for the library to utilize potentially to expand the Chatham location or further the library's mission within the community? So not just Chatham location per se, but all of the libraries.
Yes. Right. Mr. Mayor, the intention would be that we would be bringing recommendations back to council about how best to use the sponsorship funds so that council could make those decisions. So Councillor Latimer, you would have an opportunity to take a look at those and make those decisions.
And that would be after we have the input of the Chatham-Kent, the board of directors.
That's right.
Chatham-Kent Public Library.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Councillor Finn, followed by Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick question. Now, we had a motion that was tabled just prior to the report coming out with regards to Thames Campus Ball Diamonds. What will happen with that report? What are their next steps there?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. If this report passes this evening, then item number 7, Councillor Finn will take care of that, and we would be bringing the report back on that matter to the June 28th council meeting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mayor Kenneth. My question is, when we saw a slide previously, the skate park, for instance, would be renamed ABC Company Skate Park. So my question really is focused on Memorial Arena and perhaps the Capitol Theatre. So would Memorial Arena become ABC Company Memorial Arena, and of course, ABC Company Capitol Theatre? And the reason for the question is I think there's some loyalty to the term Memorial Arena as it was built post-World War II, as an honor to the war efforts from Canadian veterans. And the second question to the Capitol Theatre would be in regards to the signage of the Capitol Theatre, the historic name of the Capitol Theatre, of course that, but the signage is a pretty big deal, looks pretty costly to change. So again, the question is, would they be ABC Memorial Arena, or would it just be ABC Company Arena? Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'd invite Mr. Cimarroni to respond to that question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Mr. Mayor. Let's address the Memorial Arena. I think we would bring forward the sensitivities and the reason and the logic behind why that was named that way, and have open, honest dialogue with the interested party and make recommendations to keep the name and work around the name. There's several different ways. You don't have to have it as a specific title over top, as we call it. You can have it as a, presented by or powered by, or, funded by, or there's different verbiage you can use for different things. So for the Memorial Arena, we would certainly have all those sensitivities in mind when that dialogue's taking place. For the Capitol Theatre, I think the question you're specifically addressing is who would brunt the cost of that. So in the negotiation, you bring forward that all of those changes and the rollover are actually brunted by the company coming in who's going to do the naming. So typically they pay for the switchover. However, again, there is a world where somebody may want to call it the Capitol Theatre. So it could be Company X Capitol Theatre. We would have to help them understand what the legacy name has or how much value it has in continuing it that way. But typically on the costing, the early onboarding of a client is difficult because they do brunt the cost of the change. So it becomes net dollars for the city.
Right. Okay, great. Thanks very much. And good to see you again, Dan. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Seeing no other questions, we'll put it to vote.
Council just waiting for one more vote. All votes are in. Motion passes 17-1.
Item 15, Community Development.
15A, Climate Change Action Plan Relaunch. And I'll pass it over to Bruce McAllister, General Manager of Community Development.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to introduce Huda Oda, our environmental climate change technologist from our Infrastructure and Engineering Services Department, and Gabriel Clark, our environmental planner from our Community Development Department, who've been working together on the Climate Change Action Plan over the past several months now. They're going to provide a brief presentation on the status of the Climate Change Action Plan, including an overview of the updated project framework, the work done to date, the revised engagement process, an overall modified timeline of the project. So without further ado, I'll turn things over to Huda and Gabriel.
Thank you, Mr. McAllister. Good evening, Council. My name is Huda Oda. I'm the engineering technologist for climate change with IES. I hope you can see the screen well.
Yes, Huda, we can see your slides and we can hear you. Thank you.
Perfect. Gabriel?
Thank you, Huda, and good evening, Mayor Caniff and members of council. My name is Gabriel Clark. I'm the environmental planner within the Planning Services Department, and I'm co-leading the Climate Change Action Plan project with Huda. We're here to relaunch the Climate Change Action Plan that was initiated in late 2019 and suspended in early 2020 with the onset of the COVID pandemic. So in terms of the agenda for this evening, we're just going to quickly review the plan development process, the major project steps, and the updated project timeline. So a reminder of why the administration is undertaking this endeavor. You will recall that in the CK Plan 2035 and 2019's Council Climate Emergency Declaration, both specifically call for the development of a municipal climate change action plan. The development of this plan would also fulfill a number of provincial directions, which are listed on the screen here, including the 2020 provincial policy statement, which requires that municipality consider the causes and impacts of climate change as part of new development policy. The Ontario regulation on asset management that requires municipalities to consider the impacts of climate change on municipally owned infrastructure, and the Ontario regulation with regards to energy conservation that requires the development and implementation of corporate energy conservation plans. So the original terms of reference, you may recall, were presented to council in November of 2019, and they initially called for an 18-month timeline with a completion date of June of 2021. The updated timeline based on the temporary suspension of the project is now June of 2022. And you will likely recall that the original terms of reference included a project scope that was focused on addressing both the causes and impacts of climate change at the local level, as well as a focus on community initiatives and initiatives for the municipal corporation. So the current terms of reference the original terms of reference were built on a 3-milestone framework, which included milestone 1, which was based on the collection of locally relevant climate data and analysis of it. Milestone 2, which was based on or focused on identifying local priorities with regards to climate change. And milestone 3, which was focused on the identification of appropriate actions that create local benefits for our community. Tasks associated with each of these milestones included the production of deliverables, stakeholder engagement activities, and regular communications with council. So in contemplating the relaunch of the Climate Change Action Plan, we've retained the same 3-milestone framework that was initially provided to council, with the addition of the project relaunch step. That includes a number of steps at the front end of the project to relaunch it with the intent of successful project completion within the timeframe. The project relaunch step will be talked about in further detail with Huda in just a moment here. Thank
you. Huda, you're muted.
Oops, do you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you, Gabriel. In this slide, I will just delve into a little bit more detail about the deliverables and the stakeholder engagements associated with the different phases of the development process of the Climate Change Action Plan, or I will call it the CCAP. So the project relaunch consists of 3 steps, the first being the development of a project relaunch framework, and then conducting a shared understanding that is corporate-wide with the municipality of Chatham-Kent. And then presenting the project relaunch information report, which we were doing today, and by doing so, we've completed that phase. Milestone 1 consists of conducting a climate analysis for the locality of Chatham-Kent, which is attached to today's agenda. Reviewing the federal and provincial policy, as well as existing municipal plans and priorities that are related to climate change. Establishing GHG or greenhouse gas inventories for both the community and the corporation. And then we're finishing off that milestone by conducting one of 2 council workshops that will be focused on identifying priority areas with council that you wish for us to explore further with the staff in the community. And then at the end, we'll summarize those tasks with a report to council, Milestone 2 consists of a corporate engagement that will be focused on climate change mitigation on the corporate level, a community engagement that will help identify the vision and the goals that are supported by the community for the CCAP, a natural cover change assessment project, which is done through a collaboration with the Lower Thames Valley Conservation Authority, and an infrastructure risk assessment, which will help put some climate lens on the infrastructure and Chatham-Kent's assets on a system-based assessment. And the main takeaways from that milestone will also be summarized in the report. The last and third milestone consists of 2 more engagement exercises, and the community engagement will be focused on supportable actions by the community for the CCAP. The corporate engagement will be focused on adaptation initiatives within the municipality. And we'll also be planning a council workshop that is the second and the last that will help identify supported actions that will go into the plan. And then that will all be summarized in a CCAP plan that will be presented to council for adoption next summer. In this slide, I'll present to you at a glance what the development process looks like in terms of timeline. So the green arrows here denote the deliverables for the project team to finish throughout the process. So by the end of tonight, we essentially have completed tasks 1, 2, and 5, and we're finalizing tasks 3 and 4, which are associated with the policy review and greenhouse gas inventories. Then we have the yellow arrows, which denotes the approximate timeline of the engagement sessions that we will be conducting. So we have 2 in the summer, the corporate engagement as well as the community focused, and the second sessions of those engagements will be towards the end of the year and into the new year of 2022. Throughout the process, we're engaging with council approximately 9 times through reports and presentations in order to maintain communication and update council on major milestones we've achieved. So today we're coming to you with an information report about the relaunch framework. The climate analysis report is also attached to this agenda. Later this summer or next month, we'll come to you with a summary of the milestone 1 tasks once that's completed. And then once the project in collaboration with the Lower Thames Conservation Authority is completed, that is focused on the natural cover, we'll come to you with a dedicated report on that as well. And then the council workshop, the first, is planned for the fall around October, but yet to be determined in detail. In November time, around then, we'll come to you with a summary of the tasks finished within milestone 2. And then again, once we finish the risk assessment for the infrastructure in Chatham-Kent, we'll also come to you with a dedicated report just because of the importance of the subject. And the second and last council workshop is going to be in the spring of 2022. And all of that information and the process will culminate in a report and a plan adoption that hopefully is going to be done by June of 2022. Thank you. That is all we have. Please let us know if you have any questions.
Any questions? Seeing none, you obviously did a fantastic job presenting that. So thank you for the report.
Moving on to 15C, community engagement process to support council's motion on woodlots. And again, I'll pass it over to Bruce McAllister, General Manager, Community Development.
Yes, thank you again, Your Worship. So in support of Council's April 26 woodlot motion, over the past several weeks, and in light of the current COVID-19 restrictions, administration has been working on designing a community engagement process and an online engagement platform that will be used to gather resident feedback on the motion. Given the importance of the subject to council and the community, we wanted to make every effort to bring awareness to this engagement and the possibility for the community to provide input. So several steps are being taken to promote awareness as outlined in the report. Specifically, the online platform guides residents through a series of questions and asks them to share their thoughts on options to manage woodlots through potential education programs, incentive programs, and potentially regulation as well. In addition to the online platform, a virtual town hall meeting is being planned to be held on Tuesday, June 29th from 6 to 8 p.m. Additional details on the event are provided on the project page. And later this week, there'll be a more detailed agenda on the specifics of that event as well. So with that, I'm going to briefly turn it over again to Gabriel Clark, who's just going to give a quick demo on how to access the platform online.
Thank you, Mr. McAllister. So as was mentioned, I'm just going to briefly show council and the community how to access the online engagement platform. So I should be sharing my screen now.
Yes, Gabriel, we can see your screen.
And it says, let's talk Chatham-Kent, I'm hoping.
Yes, it does.
Perfect. Okay, so you would just enter into your browser and go to letstalkchathamkent.ca, and then you will get to this landing page. And when you do, you just scroll down to the consultation on council's Woodloch motion project page. You click the engage button, and that brings you to the landing page for this community engagement process. And what we've done is we've embedded the link directly into the page, and we've also put the full link here to make it easily shareable through email or through social media. So you would just click on that, and then a separate window would open up, and you would get to your welcome page for the Othello platform, which is the online engagement platform that we're going to be employing for this engagement process. So that's really all I wanted to show, is just how to access the engagement platform. And if there's any questions, myself or Bruce would be happy to take them. Thank you.
Seeing no questions again, thanks again for the report, and we'll move on to the next item.
Oh, sorry, Mayor Caniff, I was trying to raise my hand. It's Councilor Harrigan.
Okay, Councilor Harrigan, go ahead.
Great. Just a quick comment to Gabe and Bruce. Thanks for giving that overview. I think that that's a great tool to use in light of some of the gathering restrictions. There was a note, I believe, in the report, and then I think I saw it actually on the Let's Talk demo about like a community discussion or conversation, like a virtual meeting. Is that also part of the plan? And at that meeting, will you be collecting feedback, or will you be sharing the feedback you've received to date?
Thank you. Yeah, so the intent of that open house was to schedule it a couple of weeks into after the platform's been launched, about halfway through. And it's going to be a Zoom style virtual town hall meeting. We're still working through the details on the specifics, but the idea is to do breakout groups. And this is maybe a call out to community members who might be interested. We're actually looking for specific hosts. There'll be details on what that role means, but it's simply to, kind of facilitate the individual breakout session. So the more hosts we have, probably the more folks we can have on that event. So nothing too onerous. It's just really to keep track of time, and then to talk about some of the specific questions we'll have prep before that. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks so much, Bruce. Those were
Councillor Sakachi, do you have a question?
Yes, I do have a very brief question from Mr. McAllister. Mr. McAllister, I noticed in 3A, it indicates about the direct mailouts that were sent out that should be actually being received this week. In those direct mailouts, what are your suggested ways of contacting the municipality besides the online forum? Just for the residents that aren't so tech savvy, is there some other ways that they can get ensure that their stakeholder comments are received? I know that it's great that you guys are doing fantastic. You're doing the media releases as well. Just want to make sure that there is the opportunity to get their comments in other ways.
Sorry, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah. So we've offered people to solicit feedback directly as well. We are encouraging as many people to participate as possible in this process, just given the time frame and circumstance. But as we noted, we'll also be sending out direct mailings to all stakeholder groups who've previously shown an interest in this topic, just to make sure they're aware as well, Councillor Sakachi. there'll be, as I mentioned, a couple radio spots later this week, a media release sent out as well. So we're hoping to get the message out on how to contact us and participate. So
Thank you very much, Mr. McAllister. I just know that that's one of the biggest things that we do here when it's mostly online with these challenging times, is that there is a large portion that we miss and we don't identify. So I'm greatly appreciative of the mailouts as well as the media releases. So very, very thankful of that. Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, we'll move to the next report.
Next, we move on to 15D. Sorry. 15D, Ontario Heritage Act, Part 4, Designation of Properties by Municipalities, 30 Elwood Avenue, Community of Chatham.
Councillor Kirkwood White.
Yes, sir.
And Councillor Wright. Does one of you have a motion to put on the floor?
I may have a motion to put on the floor. I have a motion that has been modified by staff, and I'd like to make some remarks in advance of that, if I might, if that's okay.
Madam Clerk.
Yes, the report that was in the package is just an information report with no direction from administration. So council's welcome to make comments on the report, and if there is a motion to put on the floor, they're welcome to do so.
Hey, so Councillor Kirkwood White, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to say at the outset that I have limited expertise with matters related to the heritage designation, but I am concerned that council is being asked to accept the contents of a report that is in direct conflict, not only with the Municipal Heritage Committee that was appointed by council, but also with the report from the planning firm in Kitchener, Ontario, which is an accredited member of the Canadian Association of Heritage Planners that was engaged by the homeowner at her own expense to support the committee's recommendations. This homeowner has waited for over 2 years for a recommendation from the Municipal Heritage Committee to come before council, and she has provided each of the council members with a copy of her deputation, along with the 24-page planning firm's report. And as noted earlier, because this is an information report, it really provides no opportunity for the committee members to speak in an effort to refute the report's contents, and if not pulled from the consent agenda, would have been approved as presented. And while I rarely disagree with administration's recommendations, it is important for me on this particular occasion to speak on behalf of the volunteers who have been appointed to the Municipal Heritage Committee and the constituent to highlight some information that is in opposition to some of the comments. I had intended to list a number of those comments, but I think that the constituent in her deputation to council, as well as the members of the Municipal Heritage Committee who submitted a deputation, have done a really good job of pointing out the fact that a property may be designated under Section 29 of the Act if it meets one or more criteria for determining whether it is a cultural heritage value or interest. And these criteria were outlined in the deputations, and 30 Elwood meets all of the 3 criteria for designation. So I therefore proposed a motion based on the recommendations of the Municipal Heritage Committee and the firm of McNaughton, Herman, Britton, Clarkson Planning Limited in Kitchener, recommending that council approve the heritage designation for 30 Elwood Avenue in Chatham. That motion, which I believe Judy has, was modified to read that municipal council give notice of intent to designate 30 Elwood Avenue in Chatham for its cultural heritage value or interest. And that is not what I had intended, because I do not understand what is involved in the notice of intent, whether it's a new thing that we need to be following, and what happens if there is an objection to the designation. So if someone can clarify that, we may be able to get to the point of proposing a motion that gets this piece of property designated.
Bruce McAllister, can I get you to comment on that, please?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. I was just going to turn it over to Ryan Jocks, our Director of Planning, to specifically comment. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. The heritage designation process is set out by the Ontario Heritage Act, and there are a couple of steps to be achieved before a property is designated and given those protections that the Heritage Act affords. The first formal step is that Municipal Council must give its notice of intent to designate a property. What that is a public notice, which is posted in accordance with the municipality's notice bylaw. It's posted on the municipal website for a period of 30 days. What that does is set out a public opportunity for comments or objections to council's intent to move to protect the property. If there are no objections within the 30-day notice period, council could then consider the passing of a designation bylaw, which is then registered on the title of the property. And at that point, the property is designated. If during the 30-day period there is an objection, the matter is referred to a provincial tribunal called the Conservation Review Board, in which case the merits of the designation are argued by the parties involved in that objection. And ultimately, the recommendation made by the Conservation Review Board comes back to council. Council then has the final decision on the matter at the end of that process anyway. Thank you.
Thanks for the clarification, Ryan. I just was concerned about the change and needing to understand whether this was a new rule. I understand that this is not the way things have been done in the past. So is this now part of something new?
No, thank you, Mayor Caniff. The Heritage Act hasn't changed. All of the designated properties in Chatham-Kent have went through this sort of two-step process where there's first notice published and then a bylaw passed. So there's two touch points or actions of council required. If council simply accepted the report or approved the report by the consultant or by the Heritage Committee, that would essentially not give any direction to administration to move through and post notice and ultimately designate the property. So the matter would still effectively end with council simply approving a report.
Okay. Thanks for the explanation. I believe that there is a seconder for this motion as amended.
So can we put up there? Okay, this is the motion.
So just to clarify, Councillor Kirkwood White, this isn't an amendment. Again, it was an information report, and this motion that was brought forward today, I was just trying to get the proper process to you. So if you want to put your previous motion on, as Ryan indicated, that wouldn't get to the steps to actually designate this property. So this wouldn't be an amendment. This is just your actual motion to get the proper steps going for the notice.
My apology, I used the wrong word. Thank you.
Councillor Wright, will you second this?
Yes, I would. Now, does this move forward now so that the notice will be sent out to the community with this motion?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Yes, that's correct. If this motion is approved, administration will move to post the notice of intent to designate.
Okay, yeah. I'll make the motion to second it.
Okay, I've got a couple other speakers, Councillor Bondi and followed by Councillor Sakachi.
Thank you, Mary Kenneth. And just for transparency, yes, I did grow up at this this address. My mother lived there for just about 6 months shy of 50 years. So I'm pretty familiar with the place, obviously. So there's that. Obviously, I don't have a conflict because there's no benefit to me if this does or does not get a designation. What I don't understand, and I totally support the designation, is the home that I live in now is a heritage home. It was designated about 8 years ago or so. And as I recall, because it was my house, it went to council and council voted on it that very evening, and the designation was completed. If there was ever a public notice, I wasn't made aware of it. Council wasn't made aware of it. It certainly didn't go to council twice because I would have remembered, because they did have to declare a conflict, as that was the house that I lived in. So my question to Judy is, does council not have the authority to tonight designate 30 Elwood Avenue as a heritage property? Or do we have to go through this public posting? Because we certainly didn't do it with my place. And if there's some legislation out there that indicates so, if somebody could email me, that'd be great. But like, I know I didn't go through it. And I would think that council has the authority tonight to take Councillor Kirkwood White's initial motion, the unaltered motion, and vote on it. But Judy, you could correct me if I'm...
Mr. Jocks, can you comment on that, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Caniff. I'd be pleased to follow up perhaps after this meeting in an email with the records of the prior designation process for clarification. And to the second part of the question, that couldn't council not designate the property tonight? No, the council is required to follow the provincial legislation, which is first to give public notice where there is a mandatory objection period under the Ontario Heritage Act. And council's designation of the property comes at the end of that process by the passing of a bylaw, which cannot be considered by council unless it's followed those first few steps of the process under Section 29 of the Heritage Act. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Caniff. Ryan, then I'm curious, why didn't I go through this? Like, it didn't come to council 2 times for me. It came once. So was that a case of the committee made the recommendation, staff then made the public notice, unbeknownst to council, there were no objections, then it came back to council for approval? So why are we doing this time? Is that because administration's not recommending? Is that why we're going through this elongated process?
Thank you for the question. I think if it pleases council, I would like to follow up with the details of the process of that prior designation, just so it can be clarified that it in fact did follow the same process as what's being suggested by myself here today.
Okay, sure, but I'm just curious, Ryan, because I've been on council long enough that we have designated several different properties. Not a lot, it doesn't happen all the time. So I guess my question again is, why is this happening tonight and not any other time before? And I understand, I believe you, obviously that is the process, but we didn't see this the other time. So why are we seeing this?
I'm sorry, Councillor, I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Well, what I'm getting at is when we've designated in the past, it came to council one time for an approval, like an up or down. Are we going to, and we do every time, right? So why is this one a 2-step process, whereas the other designations have been what appeared to be a 1-step process? Where it came to council, we were given a little synopsis of why the place should be designated, and then we vote on it. Like, we didn't go through this for the other designations. I don't understand why we are doing a 2-step process on this place and not on others.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm very confident that all of the designations have went through a 2-step process, and that's what I'd like to follow up with council to confirm.
Like, when you say a 2-step process, right? I'm not trying to be argumentative. I'm just trying to clear it up. The other designations, did they come to council once for an intent to designate and then back to council for an actual approval?
Yes, all of them have.
Okay, it's funny. I don't recall that ever happening, but
sorry, can I clarify here just one thing? I believe what's happened in the past, from what I'm hearing, is that council approved it. There was no objections, so council never heard about it again. The only time the council will hear about it is if there's objections to it. Is that correct, Mr. Jocks?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. No, council has always made two different decisions. Decision one is to give notice of intent to designate. After the completion of that notice period, if there's no objections, council has a second decision point, which is the passing of a bylaw. So each of these decision points have resulted in a separate report from staff to council for consideration. Thank you.
Okay, sorry, I guess I've missed that in the last 11 years. I don't recall that happening one time, but if you say so, I guess that's that. So we do, just to be clear, we do not have the ability to designate tonight. We have to go through this 30-day waiting period. And if there's an objection, the objection goes to the Conservation Review Committee. They will make a decision, I assume, in short order. And then that recommendation will come back to council, and we still have the ability to designate it as heritage or not. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Great, thanks, Ryan. So what type of time frame are we looking at? If the notice is posted, say within 7 days, there's a 30-day period. I'll assume there's going to be an objection, or else we wouldn't be doing this. How long do you think it would take, just so that the committee and the homeowner and council and the rest of the public has an idea of what kind of time frame we're looking at? Is this going to be within 4 months or 1 year? Or do you know? I don't know. I think it'd be, a courtesy to let people know what kind of time frame we're looking at, because this has been ongoing for 2 years. So,
Yeah, if notice is posted in relatively short order, say within the next week or so, the 30-day period would commence. And I would suspect that a report to council with a bylaw could come back in early fall, say maybe September, October.
Okay, early fall, September, October. We can look forward to seeing this again. Great, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Madam Clerk, did you want to make a comment?
Yes, thank you. While the discussion was going on, our faithful council coordinator was able to look up the previous reports, and Councillor Bondi's, your intent to designate came on November 14th, 2011, and it came back to council for designation on March 5th, 2012.
Thank you, Mary Cam. So Judy, when that happened, again, I don't remember it, and I don't have a very good memory. I'm not that smart, so it's me, obviously. But by not recalling this, would this be something that would be like in a consent agenda with a number of different things? That's why I missed it, because I know we didn't discuss it. But anyway, you know what? Don't worry about it. It's procedural. I get it. As long as we're following the rules, we know that September, October, it's all good. I don't want to waste any more of council's time.
And I can just say that they had recommendations, so they would have been in the actual agenda with motion, so it wouldn't have been any consent agenda or anything. And I can send the minutes if you'd like, or they're on the website for 2011 and 2012.
No, it's fine. I believe you. As long as we know this thing's not going to drag out for another 2 years. And again, I don't know if council will approve the designation or not. We'll find out in September, October. So thank you very much. And I've taken up enough of all of your time. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Sakachi, and then to Councillor Kirkwood White for final comments.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. My question's been answered several times over the last few minutes. Thank you.
Councillor Kirkwood White, any final remarks prior to voting?
No, I just want to thank everybody for looking into this matter. As you can appreciate, I have had numerous conversations with the constituent, the homeowner, and given the fact that she's had to wait for 2 years, I hope she doesn't have to wait for too much longer. So thank you very much for your time, Your Worship.
With that, we'll put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 17-0. Moving on to section 16, Community Human Services. 16A, Chatham-Kent Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. I'll pass it over to perhaps April Reedike, General Manager of Community and Human Services, to introduce.
Thanks, Mayor Caniff, for that, and Judy as well. We are here tonight to share with Council our Chatham-Kent Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. So I'm actually going to turn this over to Chief Khan, who will walk through a few slides and get us started. And then both Chief Khan and myself can answer any questions that Council might have of this plan. We are quite excited to reach this milestone. There's been a lot of work done getting to this place, and certainly we hope that Council is as excited as we are about being able to move this forward. So Chief Khan, I will turn it over to you, and we will get started.
Thank you, Dr. Rydyk. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, ladies and gentlemen. Before we get started, Madam Clerk, can you hear me fine or?
Yes, I can hear you, and I can see this screen with your presentation. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. It is, I'll echo what April just had to say. It is certainly our distinct pleasure to present council our first community safety and well-being plan for the municipality of Chatham-Kent. This has been a long time coming and developing. However, I am pleased that we were able to draft, assemble, and get the plan before you today for council's approval, and to ensure we meet the provincially regulated implementation date of July 1st, 2021. Next slide, please. I hope everybody's got a hard copy of the plan. It looks like this, the front page anyway. And before we delve into it, I certainly would be remiss if I did not bring to council's attention the key committee and working group personnel who were so instrumental in developing this plan, which is congruent and specifically tailored for our municipality. To this end, the steering committee consists of those members identified on page 24 of the plan. So if you have the plan, you can take a look on page 24. And back in October of last year, 2020, the steering committee assigned an internal municipal staff from those identified on page 5. And once again, I would refer you to page 5 to form a working group. These members were really the boots on the ground in developing and assembling the plan you have in front of you today. Finally, and equally important, were all the first strategy participating agencies, which are identified on page 25, who were instrumental and basically act as our subject matter experts from their respective agencies. I just want to say a huge thank you to all these individuals, especially the working group members like Chantel, and I believe Chantel's here this evening as well, Sarah, Teresa, Joanne, Whitney, Doug, Renee, Marjorie, Rashu, Brian, and please, I apologize if I missed anybody, for your diligent work and effort in making this plan really come to fruition. Next slide, please. So, where did this all begin and what was the impetus for this plan? Well, back on January 1st, 2019, amendments to the Ontario Police Services Act came into force, which mandated every municipality in Ontario to prepare and adopt a community safety well-being plan, directing us to work in partnership with police services, boards, and various other sectors, for example, health, mental health, education, community, social services, children, youth services, and the list really goes on. As originally communicated, municipalities had 2 years from the in-force date to prepare and adopt their first community safety and well-being plan, which was originally for January 1st, 2021. But the government obviously recognized that the pandemic has created an unprecedented challenges, and as a result, extended the new deadline for municipalities to prepare and adopt the plan by July 1st of this year. According to the province, the goal of the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan is to, and I quote, to achieve sustainable communities where everyone is safe, has a sense of belonging, opportunities to participate, and where individuals and families are able to meet their needs for education, healthcare, food, housing, income, social, and cultural expression, end of quote. To achieve this, the intent was to develop plans that emphasize, obviously, an integrated collaborative approach, which redirects stakeholder efforts and resources towards proactive investments while avoiding, where possible, reactionary incident-driven responses. So I know, for example, in policing, and I know Councillor Finn has probably heard this a few times, in policing we refer to these as the 3 Ps, more commonly known as prevention, problem solving, and partnerships with the community, as opposed to the traditional policing model, which always emphasized the 3 Rs of policing, which were rapid response, random patrol, and reactive investigations. And don't get me wrong, that still occurs in our profession, but obviously we want to emphasize the 3 Ps versus the 3 Rs. Next slide, please. So the provincial planning framework, referred to as the Community Safety Wellbeing Plan Framework, is a shared commitment in Ontario and identified basically 4 areas that are critical for developing community safety and well-being. The 4 areas are obviously depicted in this current slide, which describes the different levels of intervention or programs to respond to identified risks in our respective communities. Some of our local stakeholders, which provide the services as depicted in the 4 areas, can be seen on page 15 of the actual Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. So using, for example, the 4-ring model before you, the goal of the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan is to, number 1, improve how our community works together, and to reduce reliance on obviously reactive emergency responses, or that center ring in the slide in front of you, and ensure the safety and well-being of community members through social development, prevention, and risk intervention, or the other 3 rings above that incident response ring. Also, we want to respond to community needs using a evidence-informed, coordinated, strengths-based approach, leveraging existing plans and priorities in order to mobilize existing partnerships, which we already have in place. Next slide, please. So the question which begs to be answered is, how did we achieve these 3 priorities as seen in the slide? Of number 1, as you can see right underneath priorities, community awareness and integration. Our second priority, mental health and substance use. And last but certainly not least, housing and homelessness. Well, in developing our plan, empirical data analysis from the first strategy's intervention risk tracking database, thank you, Councillor Crew, confirmed that the primary factors for risk intervention in our community are number 1, mental health, number 2, housing and homelessness, and number 3, obviously, substance abuse. Data confirms that Chatham-Kent residents are experiencing increasing socioeconomic inequality, homelessness, and rising mental health and substance use disorders. The COVID-19 pandemic has obviously further exacerbated these issues. Continued review and assessment of numerous existing Chatham-Kent community plans, previous reports to council, and obviously extensive stakeholder engagement confirmed these risk factors. However, also highlighted was a lack of community awareness and service integration. This continued to be a barrier for a lot of people accessing the assistance they need, certainly at the time and when they need it. I would further add to this end The Chatham-Kent Community Safety Plan outlines 3 priority areas of focus with defined outcomes, once again, as depicted in the slide, for improved community safety and well-being in our community. So for example, in the slide's first bullet point, community awareness and integration as an outcome, on the outcome side, people know where to go to get the services they need, obviously when they need them. Under the priority of mental health and substance abuse, an outcome you can see is people can access local mental health and substance use supports and obviously services. Finally, under the priority of housing and homelessness, the outcome we're seeking to obtain is people have a safe place to call home, which requires affordable and supportive housing. These risk factors were identified once again from the first team's strategy intervention risk factor database, and I presume that everybody knows what FIRST stands for. It stands for Fast Intervention Risk Specific Team Strategy. And we've had that in place now for, I'm going to say 4 years, 5 years now, Councillor Crew?
2016, Chief.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So the attached, and what I hope everyone has a hard copy of, 31-page community safety wellbeing plan documentation consists of 13 action items as well as corresponding outcomes and key performance indicators are all depicted on pages 26 through to 29, which ensure that, you know, an implementation plan is initiated. Both monitoring and evaluation are conducted in order to track change. The information collected and analyzed will consist of a mixed method approach with both qualitative and quantitative empirical data being hopefully gleaned to further guide change progress, assist change agents by clarifying the expected outcomes while enhancing what I would say as accountability and oversight. Community awareness and integration component really provides what I like to refer to as a plan to communicate, a communication plan, ensuring people know where to go, as I indicated earlier, to get the services they need, obviously when they need them. Next slide and final slide, please. So finally, what are the next steps? Well, this plan requires a champion of the plan to create and maintain community momentum, action, and motivation. Considering the number of stakeholders involved, which is a large and significant amount, the development of a coordinator position is suggested. The province recommends that the coordination should be from an area that has knowledge or authority over community safety and well-being, such as social services. Once again, to this end, community social services will bring a report to council within the next 3 months outlining this position and the proper resources, including staff resource costs associated to it. Finally, when we analyze and delve deep into the root causes attributed to why people either end up either in the formal criminal justice system or healthcare system, we can usually connect it back to a correlating social factor such as, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, you know, factors such as income, mental health, homelessness, or an essential service required for a person's overall well-being. Many of these particular tenets overlap, and remediation really requires a multi-sectoral integrated approach to service delivery. Subsequently, each action item, as outlined in the plan, will build upon or enhance the many services or initiatives already in place within Chatham-Kent. The ultimate goal will be towards ensuring all of our citizens within our municipality feel safe and have a sense of belonging by fulfilling everyone's basic needs. As I stated earlier in slide number 3, these include education, healthcare, food, housing, income, as well as social and cultural expression. Having said that, this concludes our presentation, and we, which includes some of our subject matter experts, such as obviously Dr. April Rydike, Program Manager Chantel Perry, Sergeant Doug Cowell, and Councilors Crew and Kirkwood White. Look forward to fielding any questions or concerns for clarity purposes at this time, Your Worship.
Thank you. Can I get Councilor Kirkwood White and Councilor Crew to move the motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, questions starting with Councilor Kirkwood White, then followed by Councilor Crew, then Councilor Latimer.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Thank you to Chief Khan for providing a very comprehensive overview. As co-chair, I would like to commend Chantel and her team for pulling together the components of this community safety and well-being plan, and to the many community partners who contributed their time and expertise to its production. Although this plan has been mandated by the province of Ontario under the auspices of police services, there are many other jurisdictions and sectors of our community who need to be fully engaged if we are to ensure positive outcomes here in Chatham-Kent. Having participated in the recent Association of Local Public Health Agencies meeting last week, we learned that there are currently insufficient investments in public health, a lack of incentives to collaborate, and there really is a jungle of data from numerous sources that needs to be well connected in order for us to be in a position to make better decisions in the areas of mental health, addictions, and homelessness. So as we pursue the implementation of the strategies outlined in this report, we should be careful not to ignore the voices of those who have firsthand experience, not only those who are serving some of our most vulnerable citizens, but from those citizens themselves who are living with limited means, struggling with mental health and addiction issues, and can tell us what they need and help us to redirect financial resources that will help make a difference in their lives. This work will require each of us to keep an open mind to solutions we have not yet embraced, to address issues of stigma and inequity, and to respect the fact that as we learn more about diversity, equity, and inclusion, we as local government officials do not have all of the answers. It is imperative that as a community, we come together and remember to practice empathy in this difficult, but often very incredibly rewarding work of serving those in need. So I do look forward to receiving the follow-up report from Community Services on the next steps in this important work that is ahead of us. Thank you very much to everybody who has been part of this process.
Councilor Crew, followed by Councilor Latimer.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I've been involved with this since 2015, I believe, and it has been really rewarding work, to say the least. This plan's just about collaboration and coordination. When the province first identified Chatham-Kent as a pilot project, it was kind of odd because we already work really well together, but what we learned putting this plan together was that we can work better together. And these are by identifying priorities throughout our community and focusing on those 3 priorities that are really the most vulnerable and the most need the most from our community. We can work together to prioritize and make improvements. It's rather deceptive that it's in the Police Service Act because it is a community safety and well-being plan. What spurred that onto action was that the police were getting calls that weren't of an enforcement nature. They were of a social nature. And so that's when this all began. Some of the things that methods we used when pulling this all together was we were really cognizant of like going out to the community during COVID again for another survey, and because we knew that there was survey fatigue. So we used a lot of intersecting surveys that had already been done by the community with the community. And just to name one from the Prosperity Roundtable, when they surveyed the community, I think it's called Listen Up, and we gathered facts all over the place, from all over. So I don't want to beat this to death. It is mandated by the province, and we will be keeping an eye on that at a later date to make sure that it gets here in a timely manner. But I too want to thank April's team. I want to thank Polly and Chantel. Chantel, her last day was Friday, in case people don't know, but she's here tonight because of all the work she did with this. And I want to publicly thank her and her team, Sarah, and I'm going to miss somebody, but I want to thank you all because this end product was really something for us all to be proud of. And it really will serve all of us in Chatham-Kent. That's all, but thank you all.
Prior to going to Councillor Latimer, the clerk would like to make a comment about the motion itself.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just with regards to number 2, it's a point to clarify. It's a request that a report return to council with regards to dedicated staffing and resources. And so I think just to be clear, we should just have a period at the end of at a later date period and remove be supported by council. So what number 2 means is that a report comes back to council with regards to staffing resources, but we don't know if council will support it at the time. So I just think for clarity that those 4 words should be removed.
Councillor Kirkwood White and Councillor Crowe, are you okay with those amendments?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
I am as well.
Okay, Councillor Latimer, followed by Councillor Sakachi.
Well, thank you to the clerk, because that's exactly what I was going to ask to happen, because I was concerned with that last sentence. But the second thing I wanted to ask to perhaps April or Chief Khan, the outcomes and performance indicators, what frequency are they going to be measured at once you got your staffing coordinator person in place? And then how often do we hear what the outcomes and what the performance indicators are telling us? Because as you've all alluded to, there's a lot of moving pieces within this Chatham-Kent Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. And sometimes it's a domino effect, and certainly they all interact. They're not siloed. So I wondered if you could give us a bit of a hint as to what you think is going to be happening with regard to communicating back and how the plan will modify and at what frequency.
You want me to answer that, April, or?
Yeah, you can start, Chief Khan.
All right. Under the Act, we will be mandated to review it every 4 years. But locally, my suggestion, obviously, we will have to wait until a coordinator is selected and review the process with her or him, whoever the selected person happens to be. My recommendation would be that, analysis are conducted on a quarterly basis, and a report to council is at minimum provided on an annual basis.
Thank you. That makes me feel better, because I was hoping we weren't going to hear about this every 4 years, because that's basically a council term, and that's all I could see in the legislation. So thank you. I appreciate hearing that, and I also appreciate all the work by all the stakeholders and the leadership that the different departments in this municipality enacted to get this plan in place. So that's wonderful. Thank you.
Mayor Kenneth, it's April. Can I just add a comment to Chief Khan's answer as well?
Certainly.
Thank you, Mayor Kenneth. What we also have to take a look at is really the data that's available, and all of our community partners that have lots of this experience and lots of data. Not everything is measured kind of yearly or every other year. And so once we start to look at the implementation of this, and we're able to really put some form to that implementation plan, then we'll be able to take a look at all of that baseline information that we have and pull together, an implementation group, committee, whatever we want to call it, with our partners to really look at what can be measured quarterly, what can be measured yearly, what can't be measured other than every 4 years. So there's lots of moving parts that certainly what we don't want to have happen is this to be a report that sits on a shelf and we do that tick box of, yep, we've done the report, we'll come back in 4 years. We want this to be a community plan where all municipally and all of our community partners work together to really look at community safety and well-being. So lots of things still to come from us for sure. Thank you.
Councillor Stakachi, did you still have a question?
No, I'm okay, Your Worship. Thank you.
Okay. Seeing no other questions, we'll put it to vote. And then after this, before we move to the next item, I'd like to pass the floor to April for a couple minutes. So we'll put it to vote right now.
Waiting for one more vote, Council. All votes are in. Motion passes.
April, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. As Councillor Crew has indicated, Chantel Perry's last day with us was Friday. She's here tonight, coming to Council, really for us to acknowledge the work that Chantel has done, not only on the community safety and well-being plan, but for the 22 years that she has spent as a municipal employee here in Chatham-Kent. So Chantel began with the municipality right out of school, way back in 1999. She worked for us at the Employment Resource Center as an employment resource advisor. She became a case manager shortly after that in 2000, an employment resource advisor in 2006. She moved into a supervisory role in 2011 and then became a program manager in 2016. She has served the citizens of Chatham-Kent well during her 22 years. She really has spearheaded much of our work in homelessness prevention, and she has helped CK be a real recognized leader in the field and has really helped us receive awards, both from the Ontario Municipal Social Services Association and from the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness. So while this is painful for us in Community Human Services to say goodbye to Chantel, we are so excited for Chantel in the opportunity that she is moving on to. And Chantel is going to start a new phase of her career as an improvement advisor with Built for Zero, the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness. And so with that, we certainly are proud of Chantel. We are certainly excited for her and for her husband, Art, as they are able to move back east, be closer to family and friends, and take on a role that will improve lives for people right across this country. So with that, Chantel, I hope you're on camera. I can't see everyone. here, but I just think we owe you a world of thanks, and we wish you all the best as you embark on this exciting adventure in your career. So thank you.
Thank you, April. I really, really appreciate that. I've loved and enjoyed my time working for Chatham-Kent, and Chatham-Kent will always be our home away from home. So thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, April. Chantel, I just want to add a couple of quick comments. Over the last several months, I've got to know you real well working with the Ontario Big City Mayors. And I got to tell you that Chantel is a major author in the document that the Big City Mayors is going to be sending to the province of how to improve mental health in Ontario. So she did a lot of work. And as April pointed, she's done a lot of great work to put Chatham-Kent on the map. And certainly with this whole process, I've heard nothing but kudos from the people at the Big City Mayors that have been worked with her. So I share in the excitement of you being able to go back home, but certainly we'll miss you here. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate that as well.
With that, we'll move to item 17, infrastructure and engineering services.
17A, Rose Beach Line Slope Stability Municipal Class Environmental Assessment.
Councillor Wright and Councillor Latimer, you had questions. So Councillor Wright, floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Caniff. I got a couple questions here. On the solutions, line 2 and line 9, that looks like the good solutions, but then when you stroll on down on the report, they've put the New Scotland line in red, and they've done the report around the houses there, but nothing on McKinley Road. I was just wondering if somebody could answer, are they going to pave McKinley Road? Because without McKinley Road being paved, it's doing nothing for the residents along the lake there. They still have to run a gravel road. I believe the road's a mile, 1.6 kilometers long. And we brought that to council before about getting it tarred and chipped, and it wasn't done. And now on this report, they didn't put it in red there. So I just wonder if somebody could answer that.
Thank you, Mayor Kenneth. This is Chris Tiber here, Director of Engineering. The municipal class EA did evaluate upgrading McKinley Road, but that option was not carried forward. It was not one of the recommended solutions. The recommended solution was to proceed with option 9A, which you see before you tonight, which is to move forward with the short-term works of the private access for the properties immediately adjacent to the failure location. And then also to start funding through our municipal capital plan, the upgrading of New Scotland Line from Kent Bridge Road, essentially all the way to Hill Road or Hill Line. So the recommendation that came forward was to upgrade New Scotland Line and not Antrim or McKinley Road.
But when we upgrade New Scotland Line, that's still not helping the people out. They still have to drive around Kent Road 15. And that's where the complaints have been all along about running on the gravel road. It's this has been addressed before and it's got put off. And if we do it again, it's the people out there, the residents aren't going to be happy with that. It's just a matter of having that paved or moved your paved road over to McKinley and down to the lake shore again. That is a scenic drive. Lots of people like driving.
Thank you, Mayor Canfy. Understood. Again, that's the conclusion of the EA, looking at all the 9 different solutions or 9 different options that were presented. The real goal ultimately was to try and achieve a new arterial road to basically connect Kent Bridge Road all the way to Hill Line, and kind of looking at shifting that main road all the way inland to New Scotland Line, farthest away ultimately from the shoreline of Lake Erie. So that's why the recommendation was proceed with just focusing on New Scotland Line.
But you're still not doing nothing for the residents down there. We're still got this gravel road to contend with.
The residents that have the option to proceed back as of right now, to proceed back to Kent Bridge Road. So ever since the road has been closed for many years, or for the last 3 or 4 years now, the detour route associated with this has been by way of Kent Bridge Road right now all the way up to Talbot Trail. But in the future, when the funding and budget does permit to upgrade New Scotland Line, it will be moved inland to New Scotland Line. So the residents along Rose Beach Line, if they wish to proceed up to Ridgetown, then they have the option to travel back to Kent Bridge Road, a road that can handle that volume of traffic. And then as of right now, go up to Talbot Trail, or in the future, go to New Scotland Line.
I do believe it's about 10 kilometers out of their way, 10 kilometers in, 10 kilometers out. That by the time they go around, if they live right there at the corner of McKinley and they want to drive around, it's probably a 10-kilometer route around. For a short distance to be paved would save a lot of inconvenience.
I do not have that distance available offhand, but again, that was just the conclusion of the EA of evaluating every solution. And now the purpose of this information report tonight was to advise council that the municipal class EA is now complete. I went through the whole process of vetting through the public concerns, numerous public consultation and open houses, and the final recommendation, which was to proceed with New Scotland Line and the short-term solution at the properties, was the one that was ultimately concluded on, with the public fully engaged in the whole process.
I'm still getting a lot of contact from residents that want to know why McKinley Road isn't addressed here. So it just got bypassed again.
It was not the preferred solution for a number of various reasons. For the report ultimately details, I don't have the full report in front of me, but the full report is available upon request, of course. It is a very lengthy document that explains and concludes why Antrim Road and why McKinley Road were not chosen as the preferred alternative for numerous reasons, including the endangered species along the road, the width of the road, the number of properties overall impacted, and just the overall goal of providing that new arterial road from a point A to point B, which is Kent Bridge to Hill Line.
Antrim Road was a single road basically until this detour started. Then it was widened for the detour, but McKinley is a good road because there's a lot of traffic up to the gas plant there. It is a good road, but I think we're missing the boat here if we don't do something with that road to them residents down there.
Well, with the EA now being complete, and again with New Scotland Line being the final recommendation for improvement in the future, any decision of council to proceed with McKinley Road would be a separate direction from council to proceed that way.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Latimer, followed by Councillor Pinsino. And we have a few other speakers after that.
I also have got a lot of feedback from residents with regard to kind of hopping over McKinley Road there. Would they have the option of coming forth with a petition of their own, Chris, to upgrade that road? If after, I think there'd be lots of further discussion, but is that option open to those residents?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Yes, thank you for reminding me that our road upgrade policy that we currently have in place is a great tool available for the public for that exact reason.
Alrighty. Now, the other question I've got is that we're going to be certainly picking up the cost of constructing this access or private lane for the current residences. So we're going to build it, and then who's going to maintain it going forward? The municipality or the residents?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. So it is going to be the recommendation for the municipality that the private properties are going to own and maintain this private laneway. We are going to work out an agreement with them because there is 4 properties ultimately being serviced by this laneway. There will be an agreement worked out where they're all going to have a shared use of this laneway.
Alrighty. Thanks very much, Chris.
Thank you.
Councillor Pinsino, followed by Councillor Sakachi.
Thanks, Your Worship. Through you to Chris. So this private drive, obviously we don't own that property. Do we have to purchase that property to accommodate these landowners?
Thank you, Mayor Camp. Yes, that's correct. The EA concluded that we are going to need to purchase private property in order to construct this laneway, and then thereafter turn it back over to the private properties.
Okay, so is this private drive that we're going to construct, is it going to be paved?
No, the goal, the private laneway as detailed in the report is proposed to be a gravel surface. And that was also consulted with the landowners there, and they are perfectly adequate with that laneway configuration.
Okay. A lot of traffic does come from Blenheim that way and then across that McKinley Road. Is it possible to get a traffic counter out there to see what kind of traffic is there? Because I know we've tar and chipped other roads, and honestly, I question why some roads get done over others. I do believe this road is used a lot. Is it possible to get a traffic counter out there sometime this summer?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Of course, we can definitely work with our public works team to get the tube counters out there and at any time during the summer.
Okay. Possibly John and I are going to try to bring this motion back again to get that tar and chip. We'd appreciate if you could get the traffic count on it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll make sure to follow up with you following the when and the results as a result.
Mr. Mayor, if I could add, during my time here, the past 9 years now, we have actually never upgraded a road at this time yet. We have some roads, though, that we're seriously looking at that, and that's because there has been a significant change in the volume of the road, where there comes a point where a gravel road would be less expensive if it was tar and chip. But since my time here, we have not upgraded the road, and that's primarily because our asset management plan continues to be underfunded. For example, in paved and surface treated roads, we're only at about 50% funding. So at this time, we're not considering upgrading any roads unless there is a strong economic business case behind it. Thanks.
Councillor Sakachi, followed by Councillor McGrail.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I guess my questions might be more so directed to either, yourself, Mayor Caniff, or Mr. Quinton, or potentially Mr. Kelly. In reading this report, we see a lot of things in here in regards to retreating, degradation, and we have so many different aspects throughout our municipality that are really considerably in danger. And yet what I haven't heard yet from the province is any kinds of plans to address these kinds of concerns with us municipally. We're looking at the price tag on this one of over $7 million. This isn't even going to touch our number 3 highway. And I think it's very important that we kind of know as a council, because we really haven't had too much updates. How is the dialogue going with the province? Has there been any leeway whatsoever in regards to if we're going to receive any funding? And I know that Mr. Quinton and Mr. Kelly and yourself, your worship, have more direct conversation with the province, and just really concerned to see when we're going to start hearing from the province if they're going to assist us in these matters.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I'll start off, and then I'll turn it back to Thomas Kelly for some more thoughts, because he's been actively working with the province as well. So at this time, there is no funding in place for paving New Scotland Line. As Chris mentioned, that will be ranked in next year's capital budget, and there is no commitment of any funding towards the Talbot Trail erosion issues either. Thomas, do you have anything else to add?
I'll try to add some good news, possibly. Thank you, Gord. I would say over the last 3 years, I have presented to at least 7 different ministers on that very ask, not only Rose Beach Line, but Erie Shore Drive, and also Talbot Trail. Our last presentation was on Talbot Trail. We met with the province, and unfortunately, we still get the same answer. They appear to be supportive, but they have not provided any of the funding or any commitment to really look at it in the future. So we haven't given up, though. We continue to go back and ask for these. And the latest work that we're doing, we're trying to set up a specific meeting with the appropriate people to discuss how we can move forward with this.
Councillor Scott, I'm just going to add as well that in those meetings, we were very clear with the minister that we will be coming and asking for money, that we cannot do it on our own, particularly Talbot Trail. when you look at the amount of dollars we're looking at. So we're waiting on the EA for that one, and we will certainly be making a very formal ask of the province to help out, because there's just no way we can afford to proceed on. To your point that yes, there's a lot of roads, and in the future there's going to be more. So there will be a very definitive ask when we have the EA for Talbot Trail of the help that we need from the province. Not just want, but we need it from the province.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. And I'll just close up by saying I really appreciate that. We know that our staff, as well as yourself, is advocating diligently for our municipality. It's just it's a very sore spot with me that we were kind of given the road, especially with number 3 highway, and the dollars to maintain it and now to repair it. It's just not fair to our municipality. It seems like because of our population and the size of our geographically, we're constantly drawing the short straw. Either we're not meeting funding criteria because our population is too high, but we're not being judged by the rural density of our community. So, I would appreciate if any assistance is required by council that we let us know, because I think that as a whole, we need to start going a little bit more campaigning to the province a little bit more, even independently to our MPs, to ensure that there are some fundings for our municipality, because it's a necessity. And I do appreciate the floor. Thank you.
Yes, and I just want to add to that we're looking at doing a consolidated ask. We didn't want to go off and Rose Beach Line ask for money there, then go ask for separate projects. We wanted to put it together and say, this is what we need to fix all our issues that we're dealing with currently on related to that.
Thank you, Mayor. Can I just make one quick more point that Mr. T-Bear indicated? So he indicated that the potential of the road improvement process would be available, but do we not have some obligation, though, Mr. T-Bear, when the whole dynamics of the thorough of traffic is going to be altered, that we look at these aspects? And if there is they do petition, that Chatham-Kent has a moral responsibility from a financial standpoint to get involved in that process?
Thank you, Mayor Kempf. So when the traffic counters are a great recommendation, we're going to proceed, and we work very closely with our public works team to evaluate the condition of our roads and the ongoing maintenance and challenges that they have for maintaining the roads. And then basically it's a discussion that the public works team, the engineering team will have going forward. And if we believe that there's a cost benefit to upgrade the road because of the maintenance challenges that we're having with it being a gravel road, then that is definitely something that we'd bring forward to council completely separately. But that's a discussion between public works and engineering, and then ultimately coming back to council with that evaluation.
Thank you so much, Mr. T-Bear. That's all for myself. Thank you, Mayor Caniff.
Councillor McGrail, followed by Councillor Kirkwood White.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. So Councillor Sakatchi there at the end kind of touched on what I was going to circle back to, and that's a road upgrade policy. So through my term as in council here, I've had multiple requests from other individuals of why they can't get an upgraded road, tar and chip, and why they have to pay for it. So after hearing this, what do I say to them? Is it because, what is the proper answer why this road could possibly be tar and chipped, but theirs cannot without them paying? Because it's a very contentious subject, and we're going down a road that where are we going to stop?
Thank you, Mayor Camp. I'll attempt to answer that. So a gravel road is much more cost effective to maintain than a tar and chip road, as well as compared to an asphalt road. That's why we did include the road upgrade policy. And again, as per Thomas's point before about in regards to our funding, we just don't have the funds to go around and start upgrading all these roads right now. There is a significant cost to upgrade a road. It's not just as simple as putting a new surface down. You need to consider all elements, which are drainage and land and the structures and road widening, etc. So the factoring all that into the equation and then looking at the current road as a gravel road is what we would look at between ourselves and Public Works. And more than likely, and I can only suspect that 99.9% of the time, a gravel road will continue to be the most cost-effective road based on the traffic volumes, based on the amount of maintenance required for going forward for the longevity of the road. And again, that's why we're really promoting, and I still do encourage you to promote the road upgrade policy if that is still the public's desire to proceed with the road upgrade.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Kirkwood White.
Thank you, Your Worship. With apologies to both Chris and Thomas, I just received this email from a constituent in the area, and it is related to Rose Beach Line. I'm just going to read it, and then if you can respond for the benefit of the constituent, I'd appreciate it. 2 questions regarding Rose Beach Line, neither of them new, but neither included in a wide range of options. Number 1, why is installation of metal groins not been included for consideration? 2, I was told by the LTVCA people that appropriate plantings on the clay banks would help to slow down or even prevent further erosion. Why was this not listed for consideration, as both options are helping to save our banks over the last 3 decades? Both are comparatively inexpensive and ecologically appropriate. And the further question, will homeowners along Rose Beach Line continue to receive full snow removal, garbage, recycle collection, and mail delivery? That's a mouthful, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Camp. I will attempt to answer those questions, and then possibly Thomas Kelly can assist by jumping in. So the Rose Beach Line study, just for council's information, as described in the report as well, we commenced with this study quite a while ago. In advance of the Lake Erie shoreline study being completed. The project was put on hold once we ended up proceeding with the more holistic view of the Lake Erie shoreline study. And the Lake Erie shoreline study looked at exactly those elements that you're talking about in your first 2 points, about more measures to do with the protection of the bank as well as the shoreline erosion elements. And all of that was evaluated through that very extensive Lake Erie shoreline study consultation process, and it was concluded on for this specific region, for this specific area, that the recommendation is to retreat. And that was detailed in this report as well as in the final EA report, that we're following the retreat model for this particular location. And that's why we are looking at options away from the shoreline, nothing to do with the actual shoreline itself or protection or anything within the water from a protection standpoint, or staying in that location. And with regards to your last question, of course, yes, the public works services as they currently are right now, whether it be snow removal, and or garbage collection. I'm not sure if there's any contracts out there for specific garbage collection. No, none of those services will be interrupted by this.
Thank you very much, Chris. Appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor, if I could add to that, was covered in the Zuzek report back in May of, I guess it was 2020, I believe. Yes, May in 2020. And a lot of the things that you're talking about are really shoreline protection, which would be the responsibility of the private landowner.
Thank you, Thomas.
Okay, seeing no other questions, thank you for the report. The next, we'll move on to the next report.
17B, Municipal Sandbag Program Update.
Councillor Latimer, you had a question.
I did. I had a question for Mr. Brown. Is he on tonight?
I am, Mr. Mayor.
Wonderful. Ryan, I know we talked a bit, and you said you budgeted 200,000. You've used 5,000 of that, and that the reason you have the $195,000 left is because the Lower Thames Valley Conservation Authority has provided close to 100,000 sandbags thus far, correct?
That's correct. We've received all those sandbags free of charge from the Lower Thames Valley.
All right, and they haven't got anything left, correct? We have to access sandbags somewhere else?
That's correct. I think we're down to like maybe the last 5,000, somewhere in that neighborhood.
All righty. I just wanted to make sure that you were aware that we had a lot of complaints about the older sandbags from Lower Thames, and while appreciated, and this program is appreciated, believe me, we have no qualms about it. and they want to see it continue the way it is. They're wondering if they can use a different type of material and if that's been considered, especially if you're going to start paying 50 cents to $1 for each of these sandbags now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, we did have some comments with the quality of the sandbags. The Lower Thames Valley, they inherited those bags for free a long time ago as well. So I think age has kind of played a factor in their quality. But no, we've already started reviewing different types of bags, trying to get the best quality ones, and finding a local source that'll have lots of bags available. So we'll definitely take that in consideration.
That'd be great. I know particularly we had the comments we received from some residents down on the lakeshore. So they again appreciate this program. They appreciate the partnership and the services, the provision of the sand, and so I see no reason why we can't continue the way we are until 2022. So keep up the good work.
Councillor Scotchy.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Just a really quick question to Ryan Brown. I know that when I brought this motion forward, the administration was somewhat concerned about the ability to track this program and the general nature of it. But I just wanted to see the kind of feedback that you've received from the public, as well as how you feel that it's going personally.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we did identify a couple concerns, and we did provide an update in the report. I think the program is pretty well received by the public. As identified in the report, it's very hard to track fairness, or if someone wants to steal a pile of bags, there's nothing really stopping them from doing that. But I think given the spirit of there's an emergency, there's flooding going on, I think people have been taking the program pretty well received. And so far it's been pretty low cost. So, hopefully we go a few years without some major flooding events, and that money will last us a long time.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, and thank you for your diligence to our community. Thank you.
Thanks for the report. We'll move on to the next one.
17C, motion by Councillor Sakatchi regarding service level review of trails and open spaces.
Councillor Scotchy.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I just actually was bringing it forward to make an amendment to my motion. I don't know if I have to read the entirety of the motion. I'm just looking to add into parks and open spaces. But just if the clerk can comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, just for the public, it probably should be read out loud and then making the changes that you wish.
Sure, thank you. Whereas during the pandemic, trails and other open space amenities have been documented and confirmed to be more heavily utilized, and whereas despite the increased and usage, service levels have maintained relatively status quo, be it resolved that administration conduct a service level review of the areas of trails, parks, and open spaces, including staffing allocation, maintenance, garbage receptacles, porta johns, and signage to determine if any changes in service levels are warranted.
Okay, and Councillor Latimer, will you second that?
Sure. So seconded.
Okay. Councillor Thompson.
I just had a question in regards to the timing of this. How long could we expect a service level review to take place, and when could we expect this report to come back?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's Thomas Kelly, General Manager of Infrastructure and Engineering Services. So this is a bit of a challenge for us, Councillor Thompson. We have a number of initiatives on the way, certainly an emergency right now as well we're dealing with. And I know ideally you'd like to have this back in short order so that we can increase the services if it's approved and get that in place for the summer. So I think that's a reasonable request. It's just poor timing for us because we are preparing our fields right now. We're trying to get everything in order for the uptake that we think we'll see in about 1 month's time of additional sports. So this is a challenge for us. It's strictly a capacity issue, a human capacity issue on our side. And I really need to take that back to the team, because to do this properly, we need to look at what some of the usage is. And the other thing is that will that usage change on our parks and open spaces once we are out of COVID, for example? So there is quite a bit of work to do it properly. And, you know, I really would struggle to say we would have that back before the end of the summer.
I didn't really get a specific answer, which is what I was hoping for, but I think you alluded to it. We're really looking at in all likelihood, a summer of 2022 situation here for this, aren't we?
Yeah, what my timing, I was saying would be like September, and, you know, certainly things would change a lot. I think the intention of the motion is to get this in place as quickly as possible. So the other option we would have is just do a very cursory analysis and come back with some recommendations, but it wouldn't be based on, as I say, the usage and what we really feel is required. It would just do some very quick analysis. We could do that a little bit sooner, but still we're at least, I would say, a month and a half away to complete that. So it really depends on how much, what's the expectation from council. When we say service level review, that's usually a very detailed review to look at the assets, what we have, the actual usage, how often, et cetera. That's what we believe the motion is saying. If you're looking for something more cursory, for example, we've got 30 garbage pails out there that we, by the way, we pick those up and we put them away and dispose of them. We could make a blanket statement to say we feel that that needs to increase by 20%. And with that 20%, we'll need 20% more labor, et cetera. So it really depends on the level of review that council are expecting. So I would appreciate some help there to let me know. So council have two options. One is this very quick and much simpler analysis, which says, here's the assets we have, here's the frequency we use. And we look at, you know, somewhere between a 20 to 30% increase, because we are at least seeing that in our parks and open spaces, that level of increase. Or the second option is to do a very detailed analysis and doing counts and so on, and much more scientific. So I would appreciate some guidance there, and I can give you a better answer.
So, Mr. Quinton, can I get your thoughts on that, and then I'll give it back to the to Councilor Sakachi.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I just wanted to just add that we currently are going through the efficiency review process that includes quite a significant time of every director across the organization to work with. That's comparing the service levels and the cost of providing that level of service through all areas of the organization, including parks and open spaces. So I just wanted to point out that we do have staff tasked at working through that process at this time as well.
Councilor Sakachi.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Appreciate the floor, just so I can kind of clarify my motion a little bit. This motion doesn't, I say this very respectfully, does come from some level of frustration. In the past, we've received several concerns in regards to, maintenance of our across our parks, our garbage receptacles, porta johns, signage, and all that. And I want to be very adamant that the park employees that we have in South Kent are wonderful at getting back to us with the concerns. But when we call them in from an ACR standpoint, we are being told from different staff members that we were talked to that it is an allocation based on council directives. And for us to increase things, as unbelievable as it sounds, increase things as garbage receptacles, increase in porta john services, and staffing allocation, even if it's minor, has to come to council. So the reason for this bringing this motion forward, as Councillor Thompson and Councillor Latimer can identify as well, is that we've sat in numerous meetings and had numerous concerns about our open spaces, about the garbage. And if it's something that we can do from a blanket statement that takes some alleviation from the general management position to come up with a number, that would be appreciated. It's just that I'm trying to provide some level of direction by putting a motion forward with all the entirety of council to ensure that the amount that our parks, our open spaces and trails increase is being countered with the same amount of service that it's being utilized temporarily. And if that has to come back with a report to council in regards to, being a little bit, above or below, then that's understandable. But I'm just hoping maybe Mr. Quinton can comment on that aspect then.
Mr. Quinton.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. So I know what you're saying, that currently during the pandemic, perhaps there is extra use of the trails, and that's what you're really getting at. But the recommendation is to do a service level review of all these areas to determine if service level changes are warranted. That to me, the motion has more of a long-term implications. If you increase the level of service, I think the residents come to expect that level of service in years forward as well. And of course, those permanent level of service changes come as part of the annual budget process. So I think it would be a different motion to say, hire a couple extra students for this summer only to do a little bit more maintenance. Would be quite a different motion than to conduct a service level review, which Thomas's team will need to take the time to do that properly and across all of Chatham-Kent. So it's I know we're getting into fine details of the operations, but I just wanted to point out that there's a normal process that we go through for permanent changes in our service levels, and where we gather lots of data, lots of working with user groups, whatever, to determine what was needed. What you seem to be pointing to is a much quicker allocation to the funds right away to just do more without that data requirement.
Thank you, Mr. Quinton. That is exactly, and if there's, I guess my frustration now lies with the fact that this is a notice of motion. And if administration felt that there was an easier way to go about it, I would have greatly appreciated a call, because we could have worked around it and saved a lot of time. But what you had stated is exactly what my thought process was. And I didn't know if there was a variant report that was possible, if there was some overages, but naturally you would think that if our service level, our usage increased by 30%, you would hope that our service level increased at least a little bit to modify that. So, I mean, I'm not looking forward to putting a motion present that's going to create much more work for the challenging, the staff already that they're already facing. So if there's a way that we can get around this and see some increased maintenance in garbage receptacles, if Mr. Shropshire wants to comment, that would be greatly appreciated.
Two mutes on there. Hopefully you can hear me now. With respect to the initial pieces, as Gord said, we could do something in the short term to try and alleviate some of the garbage pieces. But if you want that longer term piece, then it is that service level for you. When we set our budgets for the year and council considers them and approves them, it's not like there's an extra surge capacity in the budgets that says, with very few exceptions, when we get increased utilization, the costs go up. There's no extra money for us to account for that, right? Like it's the only exceptions to that are things like our salt budget or some of those things where you have a variation or variability built into the budget. So if you would like to, I think Thomas has offered a couple of times to have us take a look at some short-term fixes that we can use to address this. We can look at trying to put that in place and let council know over the next couple of weeks as to what that cost would be to provide some additional, receptacles and so on, and have those picked up on a regular basis. We can take a look at that in the short term. If you're looking at council wanting to have us do a longer term fix, I think Gord and Thomas have expressed very clearly that that requires a lot more data analysis. So that's the choices we have.
Thank you, Mr. Shropshire. Just because I know that we are already doing a service level review as a whole, a short-term fix would be greatly appreciated. So I can pull this motion if the seconder is okay with that, in hopes to have some conversation, some short-term solutions for the 28th, if that's okay, Mayor Caniff.
Yes, I just want to confirm with Mr. Shropshire that yes, this is something we can do, because I look at it as well and saying, if there's more garbage out there, we need to improve and collect. We can't just leave it out there. If the porta johns are overflowing, we can't leave them. So those are things similar to when it snows. If it snows more, we have to do more removal. It's those basic things that hopefully we can, if we can get that, that makes a lot of sense to at least deal with the short term. We can deal longer term later.
Thank you.
Councillor Latimer, are you okay with pulling this then?
Well, I was going to ask if Anthony would pull it back, but I wanted to ask Mr. Quinton, could we not use our COVID-19 monies towards a short-term increase in service? Because it is due to, the level of use is directly due to COVID-19 thus far, anyway.
Oops. Sorry about that. Thank you, Mayor Caniff, and thank you for your question. Yes, I think this could be, if we're looking for a small increase in level of services in specific areas where there's issues, say if we start funding, maybe the solution to fund any deficits in the Parks and Rec area if they do have deficits at year end because of this.
Well, I'll look forward to Councillor Sakachi's motion coming back on the 28th then. Thank you, Gord.
Thomas, is that good for you on the 28th? I just confirm your team's going to be the one that's doing that work.
Thank you. Is a report required? If a report is required, that report is due tomorrow. So that's a challenge for me, but this is what my proposal is, that I can come back with a dollar figure that for X number of dollars, we will increase our level of overtime, or we'll hire additional students or rent an additional vehicle. I can come back with that. A couple of weeks is still very tight, please, but I would appreciate a little more time, but I understand the urgency and the fact that we'd probably like to get this in place before the long weekend in July. So if I could leave it, I'll do my very best, but I'll just simply come back with a figure and council will approve that figure. And what that figure will be it will be essentially the additional labor. So as the garbage increases, we need to pick up more often, sometimes additional overtime and longer hours as well. So that I can do, I think, fairly quickly.
Your worship, if I can, I've sent a notice to council relatively recently about the level of demands being placed upon us by a number of the emergencies. I appreciate what Councillor Sakachi is trying to do. I think what you've heard from Mr. Kelly is that he and his team will make a best effort to try and get back to you as quickly as possible with a solution. But this is the sort of request that when we're trying to reopen Wheatley and we're trying to deal with a number of these other issues, those are the sorts of things where we are really, really stretched for the labor to try and bring this together. So we will make the commitment to you. We'll be back to you as quickly as we can. If we can do it in 2 weeks, that's terrific. But please hear what Mr. Kelly's saying, that they've been literally working 7 days a week on some of these other issues as well. So we are just trying to manage that as best we can.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Mayor, if I could add, what Anna is saying is absolutely correct. And I am pulling staff from other areas, and in order to make up that loss, I'm pulling from Parks and Rec too. So that's why that's the stretching, that we have folks who are absolutely dedicated to the emergency right now, and that's putting a strain on all resources. What we do as a department is we start to spread the load basically, but again, we'll do our very best to get back to in 2 weeks. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. With that, the motion pulled, we won't be doing a vote on it then. We'll go to item 19, Finance, Budget, Information Technology, and Transformation.
Can you hear me now? Thank you. 19B, Proposed Arena Complex, June 2021 update.
Councillor Oche, you had a question?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I saw that we received an email earlier wanting to know a little bit about the us checking any biohazards, basically, and hazards in the dirt around the complex area where we're thinking of putting it originally. I just want to explain that we knew it was for sale in the property, or that someone was looking at it, and had there been a problem from the area leaking onto municipal property, we would have had to take that up with the old owners, and so that is one of the large reasons for for us doing that, because the new owners obviously shouldn't have to pay or clean up something if there was any problem. But luckily, we had no problems. So just to clear that up for anyone that's listening and was wondering about that. Thank you.
Councillor B. McGregor.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Yeah, appreciate Councillor Oche bringing up that point. And I just wanted to ask whether it's Matt or Gord. We had this environmental study done on municipal property surrounding the Navistar property. And we have it in this report because it's in a way related to the arena issue. But as we know, that property has been purchased. And tonight we approved the sale of a municipal rail spur that we had that was part of that test as well. Is it fair to say that environmental assessment, has benefits beyond just an arena project, so that it was part of any potential development of a property that's been vacant for what's a significant period of time?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I'll take that question. Just a little bit of history. In July 23rd, 2019, Council did direct us to do the environmental assessment around the perimeter of the property. So not on Navistar lands itself, but around the property, on the edges of the roads around the property. And those results were reported to Council in January of 2020, and that there were no significant migration coming onto the surrounding municipally owned property. So it is a significant benefit to Chatham-Kent Council, while Navistar still owned the property, to know that there were no issues on municipal property that needed addressed, given the historical industrial uses at the property over the last 100 years. So no matter what the future entails for the property, it was important for Chatham-Kent to know if there was any issues that needed to be addressed. We had hoped, we had applied for and hoped for a Federation of Canadian Municipalities grant to cover the costs. We have just recently found out that we were denied that grant as well. That's the real trigger for why this report is on the agenda tonight, to let Council know that we're going to write off the costs of $252,000 of that study and grant application to the 2021 operations, because there's really no purpose to bring that forward. Where we're at this point in time, we do not have Council's approval to build an arena at any location at this point.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was asking, really, why we were looking at that tonight. Understand it's related to the funding of the arena, and now there's not secondary source that we can fund that through. But just as Councillor Oche pointed out, it's a study that had some benefit outside of that arena. So, now we're really fortunate to see a site that is able to be redeveloped. And I think this environmental assessment was part of that. So just wanted to make sure that that was clear. Thank you.
Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Is there any update on any future plans for arena sports complex development, or are we just kind of in a holding pattern? Are we reapplying for government funding? Just, a general update. I think the public's probably kind of curious as to where we're going. I think our last update was that we did not receive the provincial federal funding, and we kind of stopped there. So are we going anywhere with this thing, or, consider that we're kind of talking about renaming potentially Memorial Arena. Yeah, I'll just sort of leave it there. Is there any update as to our future plan?
Mr. Shropshire, can you answer that, please?
Thank you, Worship. So the municipality will continue to look for sources of secondary funding from the senior levels of government. If there's a program that comes up and we could get a substantial subsidy for that, that will be brought to the attention of council, the same as we did previously. Administration has also brought before council a number of other major projects. This evening we were talking about the repairs required for Rose Beach line. Somebody mentioned Highway 3, I think Councillor Sakachi. The cost of moving Highway 3 alone is over $140 million. So we have a number of huge infrastructure projects that require funding. Sometimes when the provincial government and the federal government offer funding support, sometimes it's very specific to something like the arena or the multi-sport complex, we would look for that. But if we're going to go back and continue to push the province, administration's recommendation would be to also be considering some of those large infrastructure projects such as Highway 3 or Rose Beach line and so on. And so we're trying to do that quite systematically, but to answer your question directly, there is not a current application out for that we've applied to for an arena or a multi-sport complex. But the commitment is we'll continue to look, and if it becomes available, we bring that back and seek direction from council.
Thank you, Mary Caniff. Through you to Don. So the 18 million, I think we've already touched on this previously, but the $18 million that council had set aside for the arena project, has that just gone back into wherever it came from in the first place?
Mr. Quinton brought a report to council recommending a number of reallocations for the $18 million, and council has approved that. So there was a number of projects like the investment in our high-speed fiber projects that received funding from council. So that was a report that came to council a few months ago and was approved.
That's what I thought. Great. Thank you very much, Mayor.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. As that was an information report, we will move on. Thanks for the report, and we'll move on to notice of motion. I will have Councillor McGrail, followed by Councillor Sakachi, followed by Councillor Finn, and then Councillor Harrigan.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. So notice of motion, Ontario by Bike certification. I, Councillor Jamie McGrail, hereby provide notice that I will bring forward the following motion at the June 28, 2021 council meeting for discussion and voting. Whereas council's priorities and strategic direction for this term includes economic prosperity, a healthy and safe community, people and culture, and environmental sustainability. And whereas these priorities include a dedicated focus on implementing strategies to improve transportation through active transportation options. And whereas expanding trails and active transportation will promote physical activity and a healthy lifestyle while ensuring everyone has access to social and built infrastructure that enables them to participate fully in their community. And whereas CK Plan 2035 states that Chatham-Kent will meet and exceed environmental sustainability targets. And whereas the Dresden BIA is taking the initiative to become a bicycle-friendly business area through the Ontario by Bike certification. I'm just gonna move this here. Be it resolved that the municipality will assist where possible to support community BIAs related to initiatives to become a bicycle-friendly business area through the Ontario by Bike certification. Next steps include, I'm putting here the BIA/community to review the Ontario by Bike certification standards and to assess what needs to be done to meet qualification. The BIA community to schedule a community review with the active transportation and special event coordinator. The municipality's active transportation and special event coordinator will assist with any amenities or documentation needed to meet the qualifications such as booklets, maps, and tourism information. The BIA community to apply for and maintain your certification, and then the municipality to support and create a toolkit for other BIA's communities to become certified also. And that's it.
Okay, Councillor Scotchy, followed by Councillor Finn.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I, Councillor Anthony Sakachi, bring forth the notice of motion for debate and voting at the next regular meeting held on June 28th, 2021. Whereas in 2008, Council accepted the donation of the Motterwell home at 45 Sandy Street, Blenheim, for the purpose of establishing a museum to showcase the history of South Kent. And whereas Council has expressed a desire to divest of assets wherever possible, and whereas the Historical Society of Blenheim and District, HSOBD, has expressed an interest in taking ownership of the home to continue to operate as a museum, therefore be it resolved that Council direct administration to consult with the HSOBD and to bring a report to Council and consider a recommendation for Chatham-Kent to sell the home to the HSOBD for $1 and absorb all Chatham-Kent's legal costs in a 2021 variance. This report should outline any concerns of the HSOBD and Arts and Culture Services, including recommendations considering future taxation of the museum, and include any budget implications in the 2022 draft budget for Council's consideration.
Councillor Finn, followed by Councillor Harrigan.
Thank you. I, Councillor Amy Finn, hereby provide notice I will be bringing the following motion for voting and discussion on June 28th meeting of Council. Whereas the opioid crisis is one of the largest public health emergencies of our lifetime, with an average of 6 deaths per day in Ontario in 2020, a 60% rise from 2019, and a death toll of nearly 20,000 across Canada and nearly 7,000 in Ontario from January 2016 to September 2020. Whereas the vast majority of opioid deaths are accidental, which has only increased in the pandemic period to 96% of deaths, fentanyl directly contributed to 87% of deaths during the pandemic, and nearly 3 out of 4 deaths occur with no one present to respond. Whereas the number of confirmed opioid toxicity deaths in Chatham-Kent nearly tripled from 6 deaths in 2019 to 15 deaths in 2020. Whereas the rate of emergency department visits due to opioid poisoning in Chatham-Kent has increased significantly over the last 5 years. And in 2020, Chatham-Kent experienced some of the highest rates in the province. Whereas many opioid poisonings go unreported due to the highly criminalized and stigmatized nature of substance use, whereas several gaps in harm reduction services have been identified for Chatham-Kent through assessment and consultation with frontline service providers, people who use drugs and their families, including lack of access to overdose prevention sites, safer supply, and resources for peer-led substance use work. Whereas other countries have significantly reduced drug-related fatalities with reforms such as legal regulation of illicit drugs to ensure safe supply and decriminalization for personal use. Whereas the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police have stated that they agree the evidence clearly states decriminalization for simple possession as an effective way to reduce the public health and public safety harms associated with substance use, causing the government to indicate that it is now deliberating over decriminalization. Whereas the federal government has indicated it is premature to discuss these measures until there are comprehensive supports for people to get well. Whereas supports are needed, but measures that save lives are essential if people are to survive and access supports. Whereas the overdose crisis rages, showing few signs of abating. Therefore, be it resolved that the mayor write to the Government of Canada, in particular the Minister of Health, on behalf of council requesting the following. That the Government of Canada declare the overdose crisis a national public health emergency, and that the crisis be met with the same urgency observed in the federal response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and that the federal government decriminalize the possession of all drugs for personal use and scale up prevention, harm reduction, and treatment services. And be it further resolved that the mayor, on behalf of council, requests community human services provide a presentation to council regarding the opioid crisis in Chatham-Kent. And be it further resolved that the mayor send this resolution to the Premier of Ontario, Provincial Minister of Health, the Attorney General, associations of municipalities of Ontario, area municipalities, and Board of Health. That's it.
Councillor Harrigan.
Thank you. I, Councillor Harrigan, hereby give notice that I will bring forward the following motion at the June 28th, 2021 meeting of council. Whereas expand trails and active transportation to promote physical activity and a healthy lifestyle is one of the current council priorities. And whereas a health and safe community where everyone will feel safe, supported, and have opportunities to be healthy physically and mentally is a part of the CK Plan 2035. And whereas communities on the boundaries of Chatham-Kent have shared infrastructure with neighboring communities, and whereas it is important to promote partnership across communities to achieve active transportation goals, therefore I, Councillor Harrigan, move that staff return to council with a report with information about the required partnerships with Leamington and the County of Essex and feasibility of a mixed-use pathway on the west side of Erie Street South, Old Kent Road 1, from Middleton Line to Lake Erie in the community of Wheatley, and that this report return to council in advance of the 2022 capital planning process.
Okay, thank you. We're moved to closed session reports. Councillor C. McGregor.
Thank you. And through the mayor, I have a number of reports this week. The first would be Monday, May 31st, 2021. And council directed administration on proposed disposition of land by the municipality with regard to offer to purchase property identification number 005940012, Princess Street, Community of Tupperville, Section 2392C of the Municipal Act 2001, and proposed disposition of land by the municipality with regard to offer to purchase property identification number 005940244, John Park Line, Community of Tupperville, Section 2392C of the Municipal Act 2001. Council received information on litigation affecting the municipality and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose with regard to Erie Shore Drive, Section 2392E and F of the Municipal Act 2001. On our meeting of June 7th, absent was Councillor B. McGregor. Council received information on security of the property of the municipality, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, and a position plan procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on by the municipality with regard to state of emergency in Wheatley, Section 239A and F and K of the Municipal Act. And then this evening, Council directed administration on labor relations or employee negotiations with regard to fire and emergency services, bargaining authority, Section 2392D of the Municipal Act. Council received information on financial information that belongs to the municipality and has potential monetary value in a position plan procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on by the municipality with regard to naming rights strategy, Section 2392J and K of the Municipal Act 2001, and security of the property of the municipality, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, and a position plan procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on by the municipality with regard to the state of emergency in Wheatley, section 2392A, F, and K of the Municipal Act 2001. I'd so move that.
Councillor Foss, can I get you to second that, please?
So seconded.
Seeing no questions, we'll put it to vote.
One more, Counselor. All votes are in, motion passes.
We have a council information package. There are 5 items that have been pulled. 2A, I've pulled that. 2C, Councillor Kirkwood White. 3A, Councillor Latimer. 3D, Councillor Kirkwood White. And 3G, Councillor Foss. Councillor Kirkwood White and Councillor Latimer, can I get you to approve the items that aren't pulled?
So moved.
So seconded.
Any objections? Hearing none, those are passed. I'll start with item 2A and then we'll move down the list. I just wanted to cover off the nominations are open for the 2021 Chatham-Kent Senior Achievement Awards. This is a fantastic opportunity to recognize the people that make a huge difference in our community. I've been to these awards several years and there's literally fill an arena full of people that are excited about helping our community. So please make it an effort to look around your social circles and find some people that need recognition, because it's a great opportunity to do that. We've got some time to do it, August 13th. So I just wanted to bring that up because it's a wonderful event. Thank you. I'll move to item 2C, Councillor Kirkwood White.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to support the resolution in 2C that references a call on the federal government to give Ontario its fair share of affordable housing funding. And would you like me to deal with 3D at the same time? I think you're on mute.
Oh, sorry. We'll deal with each one separately. So if you can do 2C to start. Okay, can I have Councillor Crew, you second that? How about Councillor Harrigan, since I'm looking in the screen here?
Happy to second that.
Any questions regarding that? Anyone opposed to that motion? Hearing none, that motion passes. Item 3A, Councillor Latimer.
Yes, we received 2 pieces of communication, both for resolutions from the Township of Archipelago. One with regard to Bill 228, banning unencapsulated polystyrene foam. And the second is Bill 279, Environmental Protection Amendment Act regarding microplastics filters for washing machines 2021. These are both resolutions being brought forward for the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Cities Initiative. And I would like to send a letter of support to the Township of Archipelago, letting the Cities Initiative know that we, as a member of the Cities Initiative, which is a binational organization of more than 100+ mayors along the Great Lakes in St. Lawrence, that we are in agreement with these bills.
Councillor McGrail, will you second that?
I sure will.
Excellent. Any other questions? Anyone opposed to that motion? Hearing none, a motion passes. Councillor Kirkwood White, 3D.
Thank you, Your Worship. Item number 3D, I'd like to support that resolution as well. And it references that the federal government cease further consideration of eliminating capital gains tax exemptions on primary residences.
Councillor B. McGregor, will you second that?
I will second it. I heard they're not doing it anymore, but sure.
Well, if that's the case, we'll confirm that, but we'll go through, just put it in place just in case. Any questions? Anyone opposed to the motion? Motion carries. Item 3G, Councillor Foss.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm asking to support the resolution from the municipality of Southwest Middlesex, and it's regarding that staff are hereby directed to send a correspondence reporting the resolution from the municipality of Southwest Middlesex regarding drainage matters on Canadian National Railways, railroad lands, and that the resolution be circulated to the Provincial Minister of Agriculture, Food, Rural Affairs, the Municipal Affairs and Housing, the Federal Minister of Transportation, and the local MP and MPPs, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and all municipalities in Ontario. Apparently, the reason for this this resolution is Chatham-Kent apparently is having difficulty getting the drainage work done and assessing the proper railroad people to pay their fair share. So that's the reason for this resolution.
Councillor McGrail, will you second that?
I will.
Any questions? Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. We'll go to non-agenda business. Councillor Harrigan.
Thank you, Mayor Kenneth. This question is directed to John and the team, the many people who have been out at the Wheatley site dealing with the gas leak and the current situation there. I am wondering if you are able to give a public status report on what is currently taking place and what the next steps are with the situation in Wheatley.
Thank you, Worship. It's Don Shropshire speaking. There have been a fair bit of activity over the past couple of weeks. First and foremost, our fire and police services have been present for the entire time period, and they have been doing literally 24/7 gas monitoring around the perimeter of the site. And our primary focus as a municipality is to keep our citizens safe and to protect their both their lives and their property. A gas well is, or an abandoned water well, either are not really the primary responsibility of a municipal government. They generally rest with the private property owners. And if there's no private property owner identified, then that rests with the provincial government. So what we've been trying to do over the course of the last week or so is to collect information as to where the actual location of the wells are and to determine if there is any ongoing risk that's associated. Over the past 10 days or so, the municipality has received constant feedback from our gas monitoring that the gas levels are no longer emitting toxic gases. Great news for the community. The challenge now is trying to identify if that toxic gases will return, and if so, in what sort of levels, and whether that's going to continue to be dangerous. So what we've been spending time on over the past several days is trying to work and identify technical experts that can come in and help us assess the level of risk to our community so that we can make adjustments in the level of the area that's currently evacuated, or whether we can give people permission to start returning to their homes. We still have not received that technical expertise. It's something that is actually beyond the technical requirements of our or capabilities of a municipality, but we have been out with several different groups, and they have provided some advice. We're waiting to see if we can actually secure their formal written submissions as to the level of safety, and something that Chief Case could actually use to adjust the considerations for allowing people to go back into the space. But right now, we're not in a position to do that. So we really appreciate the patience of the folks in Wheatley. Chris's fire services team, especially the volunteer firefighters, have done a phenomenal job. And also kudos to Mr. Kelly. He and the engineering team have been working literally 7 days a week to try and identify additional information that can help be used to actually move us forward.
Great, thank you for that update. And I know that last week the community through the BIA had expressed a desire to have regular updates. So I will be reaching out, John, to you and team to see if we can maybe set something up or provide a written update later this week. I think there's a lot of worried folks out in Wheatley, and I want to echo again the thanks to all of the staff and who have been out there, the firefighter crews, and also the community of Wheatley who have really stepped up, as they always do, to help their neighbors out in times of crisis. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Councillor McGrail, followed by Councillor C. McGregor.
Thank you, Mayor Kenneth. Just a quick shout out for Dresden, July 2nd and 3rd. They're getting their certification for the Ontario by Bike. They are actually, the Ontario by Bike group is going to do a tour, leaving from Dresden and coming back. They expect about 40 people. They're going to start in Dresden, work their way through Wallaceburg, and then up to Sarnia for the night, and then back through Petrolia, and then back to Dresden. So a great little event and bringing people to our community.
Councillor C. McGregor. You're muted.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask through you to Don Shropshire or through to Judy, just some advice. Councillor Hall and I had a great conversation this week with Nancy Havens and Miriam Armstrong, I believe, through PAR regarding control of feral cats and colonies, as we have an area in Wallaceburg where the residents are having a struggle with some cats in the area. And through that conversation, I was wondering whether I needed to bring a motion to ask for some community education for the public, but it was mentioned to me that there would be a report coming this fall. And so I'm wondering, do I need to actually make a motion to bring back some direction to provide some education for all of our communities and how residents can maybe secure their own property so that they're not attracting feral cats? Or is it simple to ask at this point that maybe that information could be directed to Nancy Havens and she could maybe include that in her report that will come to us later in the fall?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Happy to answer the question. Thank you, Councillor McGregor. Nancy has contacted me since your meeting, and we have discussed the report that is going forward. She's currently working on the animal ownership bylaw, and we agreed to put a paragraph in there with regards to what the public can do for cats. And in fact, we intend to take it one step further and just talk about wildlife and pest control kind of things. And so we'll add that into the comments of the report. So it's an education for all of the public.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Judy.
Councillor Scotchy.
Thank you, Mayor Kenneth. Just wanted to get this in quickly. The top 25 per capita for the Terry Fox one was released recently, and I just didn't want this to be missed. I just thought it was wonderful to see that we had 3 communities in the top 25. Dresden topped the list, and Blenheim and Tilbury was also included in that list. And I just wanted to commend the community on the great initiative.
Excellent. With that, seeing no other hands for that, I have a couple. And with that, I will pass the chair position over to Councillor Pinsonneau as he's the acting mayor for the month. So Councillor Pinsonneau, can I pass the chair to you, please?
You sure can, Mayor Kenneth, you go ahead.
Excellent. I have 2 motions looking for letters in both cases here. The first one, the Greater Ontario Junior Hockey League has applied for Junior A status within Ontario, an open letter to Ontario Hockey Association. The council is aware of the history of the Maroons hockey in this community. I'm also sure that you understand the importance of the Maroons, both to the fans, but also the economic benefits of having the Maroons in our municipality. The Maroons organization is asking that the mayor and council of the municipality of Chatham-Kent endorse their letter to the OHA requesting the change of status to Junior A. I move that Chatham-Kent Council support this request and send a letter to the league indicating support for the request by the Maroons.
Could I get Councillor B. McGregor to second that?
Pleased to second that. Thanks.
Okay, are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, will this come to an official vote, Your Worship?
No, just you'll just need to ask. Oh, sorry, I'll pass that over to the clerk.
It's okay. No, you can just ask if there's anyone opposed for these two.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody opposed to this motion? Hearing none, that motion passes. Okay, you want to go with your second one?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councillors, you may be read in the news lately. On May 17th, the Canadian Radio, Television and Telecommunications Commission, CRTC, arbitrarily reversed its 2019 rates order concerning wholesale internet rates charged by Canada's largest carriers, such as Bell Canada and Rogers, to smaller companies like TechSavvy. This devastating decision directly impacts TechSavvy's business and threatens hundreds of well-paying jobs and tens of millions in investment that would benefit communities in Southwestern Ontario. Southwestern Ontario is severely underserviced for quality rural internet that is now an essential part of every resident's and business livelihood. The 2019 rates order was based on a rigorous, evidence-based, 4-year-long regulatory process. It was upheld in appeals by the Federal Court of Appeal, the Supreme Court of Canada, and the Federal Cabinet, and was widely expected to be implemented this year. The unprecedented reversal by the CRTC directly threatens TechSavvy's ongoing and previous planned $250 million investments in both fiber to the home wireline and LTE wireless network facilities, including in rural and remote communities in Southwestern Ontario. This unjust decision affects all small ISPs across Canada and threatens our local goals to achieve 95% high-speed coverage by 2025. The CRTC's decision is a terrible outcome for consumers, as it effectively guarantees internet prices will continue to rise during and after the COVID-19 pandemic. Tonight, I am asking Council to support TechSavvy and other local small ISPs by writing letters of support from my office to any group that can help convince Federal Cabinet to overturn this decision, now to support local independent investment and job creation. Copies of the letters will be included in a future council meeting information package. Some of the groups are as follows: AMO, which is the Association of Municipalities of Ontario; ROMA, so it's Rural Ontario Municipal Association; MARCO, Mayors and Regional Chairs of Ontario; LUMCO, Large Urban Mayors Caucus of Ontario; WOWC, Western Ontario Wardens Caucus; MP Dave Epp and MP Leanne Rood. I would also like administration to investigate how to additionally support TechSavvy in getting this decision overturned and supporting local ISPs. Thanks.
Thank you, Your Worship. Could I get Councillor McGrail to second that?
I sure will.
Okay, are there any questions or comments regarding this motion?
Councillor Solomon has one.
Is there anyone opposed?
Councillor Pinsonneau?
Yes.
Councillor Solomon had his hand up, sorry.
Okay, Councillor Solomon, go ahead.
Thank you. This was not on the agenda, or I would have declared a conflict. And so I'm declaring a conflict now and can't vote on it because I do work for TechSavvy.
Noted. Thank you, Councillor Solomon.
Are there any other questions or comments? Is there anybody opposed to this motion? Hearing none, this motion carries. And I will turn the chair back over to you, Your Worship.
Thank you. We're in the final stretch now. We're into the first and second reading. Councillor Solomon and Councillor Pinsonneau. Can I get you to move that?
Am I still on?
You are still on.
Well, thank you very much, Your Worship. I move first reading the bylaw.
And I will second it, Your Worship.
Excellent. Anyone opposed? Motion carried. The third and final reading, Councillor Foss and Councillor Finn.
Also move.
Seconded.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Resolution of Council, Councillor C. McGregor, and I'll have Councillor McGrail finish it off.
Thank you. And through the mayor, I would move that Chatham-Kent Council adjourn to its next meeting to be held on Monday, June 21st, 2021, and that Chatham-Kent Council authorize itself to meet in closed session on that day to discuss any matters permitted by the Municipal Act.
Councilor McGrail, can you second that?
I definitely will.
Anyone opposed to finishing at 5 minutes after 9? Hearing none, council is adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.